Chapter 1 of At the Back of the North Wind. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 1. The Hayloft. I have been asked to tell you about the back of the North Wind. An old Greek writer mentions a people who lived there, and were so comfortable that they could not bear it any longer, and drowned themselves. My story is not the same as his. I do not think Herodotus had got the right account of the place. I am going to tell you how it fared with a boy who went there. He lived in a low room over a coach house, and that was not by any means at the back of the North Wind, as his mother very well knew. For one side of the room was built only of boards, and the boards were so old that you might run a penknife through into the north wind, and then let them settle between them which was the sharper. I know that when you pulled it out again, the wind would be after it like a cat after a mouse, and you would know soon enough you were not at the back of the north wind. Still, this room was not very cold, except when the north wind blew stronger than usual. The room I have to do with now was always cold, except in summer, when the sun took the matter into his own hands. Indeed, I am not sure whether I ought to call it a room at all, for it was just a loft where they kept hay and straw and oats for the horses. And when little Diamond but stop. I must tell you that his father, who was a coachman, had named him after a favourite horse, and his mother had had no objection. When little Diamond then lay there in bed, he could hear the horses under him munching away in the dark, or moving sleepily in their dreams, for Diamond's father had built him a bed in the loft with boards all round it, because they had so little room in their own end over the coach house. And Diamond's father put old Diamond in the stall under the bed, because he was a quiet horse, and did not go to sleep standing, but lay down like a reasonable creature. But although he was a surprisingly reasonable creature, yet, when young Diamond woke in the middle of the night, and felt the bed shaking in the blasts of the north wind, he could not help wondering whether, if the wind should blow the house down, and he were to fall through into the manger, old Diamond mightn't eat him up before he knew him in his nightgown. And although old Diamond was very quiet all night long, yet when he woke he got up like an earthquake, and then young Diamond knew what o'clock it was, or at least what was to be done next, which was to go to sleep again as fast as he could. There was hay at his feet and hay at his head, piled up in great trusses to the very roof. Indeed, it was sometimes only through a little lane with several turnings, which looked as if it had been sawn out for him, that he could reach his bed at all. For the stock of hay was, of course, always in a state either of slow ebb or of sudden flow. Sometimes the whole space of the loft, with the little panes in the roof for the stars to look in, would lie open before his open eyes as he lay in bed. Sometimes a yellow wall of sweet-smelling fibres closed up his view at the distance of half a yard. Sometimes when his mother had undressed him in her room, and told him to trot to bed by himself, he would creep into the heart of the hay, and lie there thinking how cold it was outside in the wind, and how warm it was inside there in his bed, and how he could go to it when he pleased, only he wouldn't just yet. He would get a little colder first, and ever as he grew colder, his bed would grow warmer, till at last he would scramble out of the hay, shoot like an arrow into his bed, cover himself up, and snuggle down, thinking what a happy boy he was. He had not the least idea that the wind got in at a chink in the wall, and blew about him all night, for the back of his bed was only of boards an inch thick, and on the other side of them was the north wind. Now, as I have already said, these boards were soft and crumbly. To be sure they were tarred on the outside, yet in many places they were more like tinder than timber. Hence it happened that, the soft part having worn away from about it, little Diamond found one night after he lay down that a knot had come out of one of them, and that the wind was blowing in upon him in a cold and rather imperious fashion. Now he had no fancy for leaving things wrong that might be set right, so he jumped out of bed again, got a little strike of hay, twisted it up, folded it in the middle, and having thus made it into a cork, stuck it into the hole in the wall. But the wind began to blow loud and angrily, and, as Diamond was falling asleep, out blew his cork and hit him on the nose, just hard enough to wake him up quite, and let him hear the wind whistling shrill in the hole. He searched for his hay cork, found it, stuck it in harder, and was just dropping off once more when pop, with an angry whistle behind it, the cork struck him again, this time on the cheek. Up he rose once more, made a fresh stopple of hay, and corked the hole severely, but he was hardly down again before pop it came on his forehead. He gave it up, drew the clothes above his head, and was soon fast asleep. Although the next day was very stormy, Diamond forgot all about the hole, for he was busy making a cave by the side of his mother's fire with a broken chair, a three-legged stool, and a blanket, and then sitting in it. His mother, however, discovered it, and pasted a bit of brown paper over it, so that, when Diamond had snuggled down the next night, he had no occasion to think of it. Presently, however, he lifted his head and listened. Who could that be talking to him? The wind was rising again, and getting very loud, and full of rushes and whistles. He was sure some one was talking, and very near him too it was. But he was not frightened, for he had not yet learned how to be. So he sat up and hearkened. At last the voice, which, though quite gentle, sounded a little angry, appeared to come from the back of the bed. He crept nearer to it, and laid his ear against the wall. Then he heard nothing but the wind, which sounded very loud indeed. The moment, however, that he moved his head from the wall, he heard the voice again, close to his ear. He felt about with his hand, and came upon the piece of paper his mother had pasted over the hole. Against this he laid his ear, and then he heard the voice quite distinctly. There was, in fact, a little corner of the paper loose, and through that, as from a mouth in the wall, the voice came. "What do you mean, little boy? Closing up my window?" "What window?" asked Diamond. "You stuffed hay into it 3 times last night. I had to blow it out again 3 times." "You can't mean this little hole. It isn't a window. It's a hole in my bed." "I did not say it was a window. I said it was my window." "But it can't be a window, because windows are holes to see out of." "Well, that's just what I made this window for." "But you are outside. You can't want a window." "You are quite mistaken. Windows are to see out of, you say. Well, I'm in my house, and I want windows to see out of it." "But you've made a window into my bed." "Well, your mother has got 3 windows into my dancing room, and you have 3 into my garret." "But I heard father say, when my mother wanted him to make a window through the wall, that it was against the law, for it would look into Mr. Dyves's garden." The voice laughed. "The law would have some trouble to catch me," it said. "But if it's not right, you know," said Diamond, "that's no matter. You shouldn't do it." "I am so tall, I am above that law," said the voice. "You must have a tall house, then," said Diamond. "Yes, a tall house. The clouds are inside it." "Dear me!" said Diamond, and thought a minute. "I think, then, you can hardly expect me to keep a window in my bed for you. Why don't you make a window into Mr. Dyves's bed?" "Nobody makes a window into an ash pit," said the voice, rather sadly. "I like to see nice things out of my windows." "But he must have a nicer bed than I have, though mine is very nice, so nice that I couldn't wish a better." "It's not the bed I care about, it's what's in it. But you just open that window." "Well, my mother says I shouldn't be disobliging, but it's rather hard. You see, the north wind will blow right in my face if I do." "I am the north wind." "Oh!" said Diamond thoughtfully. "Then will you promise not to blow on my face if I open your window?" "I can't promise that." "But you'll give me the toothache. Mother's got it already." "But what's to become of me without a window?" "I'm sure I don't know. All I say is, it will be worse for me than for you." "No, it will not. You shall not be the worse for it. I promise you that. You will be much the better for it. Just you believe what I say, and do as I tell you." "Well, I can put the clothes over my head," said Diamond. Feeling with his little sharp nails, he got hold of the open edge of the paper and tore it off at once. In came a long whistling spear of cold, and struck his little naked chest. He scrambled and tumbled in under the bedclothes, and covered himself up. There was no paper now between him and the voice, and he felt a little not frightened exactly. I told you he had not learned that yet, but rather queer, for what a strange person this North Wind must be that lived in the great house. Called out of doors, I suppose, thought Diamond, and made windows into people's beds. But the voice began again, and he could hear it quite plainly, even with his head under the bedclothes. It was a still more gentle voice now, although 6 times as large and loud as it had been, and he thought it sounded a little like his mother's. "What is your name, little boy?" it asked. "Diamond," answered Diamond, under the bedclothes. "What a funny name!" "It's a very nice name," returned its owner. "I don't know that," said the voice. "Well, I do," retorted Diamond a little rudely. "Do you know to whom you are speaking?" "No," said Diamond. And indeed he did not, for to know a person's name is not always to know the person's self. "Then I must not be angry with you. You had better look and see, though." "Diamond is a very pretty name," persisted the boy, vexed that it should not give satisfaction. "Diamond is a useless thing rather," said the voice. "That's not true. Diamond is very nice, as big as 2, and so quiet all night. And doesn't he make a jolly row in the morning, getting upon his 4 great legs? It's like thunder." "You don't seem to know what a diamond is." "Oh, don't I just! Diamond is a great and good horse, and he sleeps right under me. He is old Diamond, and I am young Diamond, or, if you like it better, for you're very particular, Mr. North Wind, he's big Diamond and I'm little Diamond, and I don't know which of us my father likes best." A beautiful laugh, large but very soft and musical, sounded somewhere beside him, but Diamond kept his head under the clothes. "I'm not Mr. North Wind," said the voice. "You told me that you were the North Wind," insisted Diamond. "I did not say Mr. North Wind," said the voice. "Well, then, I do, for my mother tells me I ought to be polite." "Then let me tell you I don't think it at all polite of you to say Mister to me." "Well, I didn't know better. I'm very sorry." "But you ought to know better." "I don't know that." "I do. You can't say it's polite to lie there talking, with your head under the bedclothes, and never look up to see what kind of person you are talking to. I want you to come out with me." "I want to go to sleep," said Diamond, very nearly crying, for he did not like to be scolded, even when he deserved it. "You shall sleep all the better to morrow night." "Besides," said Diamond, "you are out in Mr. Dyves's garden, and I can't get there. I can only get into our own yard." "Will you take your head out of the bedclothes?" said the voice, just a little angrily. "No," answered Diamond, half peevish, half frightened. The instant he said the word, a tremendous blast of wind crashed in aboard of the wall, and swept the clothes off Diamond. He started up in terror. Leaning over him was the large, beautiful, pale face of a woman. Her dark eyes looked a little angry, for they had just begun to flash, but a quivering in her sweet upper lip made her look as if she were going to cry. What was the most strange was that away from her head streamed out her black hair in every direction, so that the darkness in the hayloft looked as if it were made of her hair. But as Diamond gazed at her in speechless amazement, mingled with confidence, for the boy was entranced with her mighty beauty, her hair began to gather itself out of the darkness, and fell down all about her again, till her face looked out of the midst of it like a moon out of a cloud. From her eyes came all the light by which Diamond saw her face and her hair, and that was all he did see of her yet. The wind was over and gone. "Will you go with me now, you little Diamond? I am sorry I was forced to be so rough with you," said the lady. "I will, yes, I will," answered Diamond, holding out both his arms. "But," he added, dropping them, "how shall I get my clothes? They are in mother's room, and the door is locked." "Oh, never mind your clothes. You will not be cold. I shall take care of that. Nobody is cold with the north wind." "I thought everybody was," said Diamond. "That is a great mistake. Most people make it, however. They are cold because they are not with the north wind, but without it." If Diamond had been a little older, and had supposed himself a good deal wiser, he would have thought the lady was joking. But he was not older, and did not fancy himself wiser, and therefore understood her well enough. Again he stretched out his arms. The lady's face drew back a little. "Follow me, Diamond," she said. "Yes," said Diamond, only a little ruefully. "You're not afraid?" said the North Wind. "No, ma'am. But mother never would let me go without shoes. She never said anything about clothes, so I dare say she wouldn't mind that." "I know your mother very well," said the lady. "She is a good woman. I have visited her often. I was with her when you were born. I saw her laugh and cry both at once. I love your mother, Diamond." "How was it you did not know my name then, ma'am? Please, am I to say ma'am to you, ma'am?" "One question at a time, dear boy. I knew your name quite well, but I wanted to hear what you would say for it. Don't you remember that day when the man was finding fault with your name? How I blew the window in?" "Yes, yes," answered Diamond eagerly. "Our window opens like a door, right over the coach house door, and the wind you, ma'am, came in, and blew the Bible out of the man's hands, and the leaves went all a flutter, flutter on the floor, and my mother picked it up and gave it back to him open, and there was your name in the Bible, the sixth stone in the high priest's breastplate." "Oh, a stone, was it?" said Diamond. "I thought it had been a horse. I did." "Never mind. A horse is better than a stone any day. Well, you see, I know all about you and your mother." "Yes, I will go with you." "Now for the next question. You're not to call me ma'am. You must call me just my own name respectfully, you know. Just North Wind." "Well, please, North Wind, you are so beautiful, I am quite ready to go with you." "You must not be ready to go with everything beautiful all at once, Diamond." "But what's beautiful can't be bad. You're not bad, North Wind." "No, I am not bad. But sometimes beautiful things grow bad by doing bad, and it takes some time for their badness to spoil their beauty. So little boys may be mistaken if they go after things because they are beautiful." "Well, I will go with you because you are beautiful and good too." "Ah, but there's another thing, Diamond. What if I should look ugly without being bad? Look ugly myself because I am making ugly things beautiful? What then?" "I don't quite understand you, North Wind. You tell me what then." "Well, I will tell you. If you see me with my face all black, don't be frightened. If you see me flapping wings like a bat's, as big as the whole sky, don't be frightened. If you hear me raging 10 times worse than Mrs. Bill the blacksmith's wife, even if you see me looking in at people's windows like Mrs. Eve Dropper the gardener's wife, you must believe that I am doing my work. Nay, Diamond, if I change into a serpent or a tiger, you must not let go your hold of me, for my hand will never change in yours if you keep a good hold. If you keep a hold, you will know who I am all the time, even when you look at me and can't see me the least like the north wind. I may look something very awful. Do you understand?" "Quite well," said little Diamond. "Come along, then," said North Wind, and disappeared behind the mountain of hay. Diamond crept out of bed and followed her. Chapter 2. Chapter 2 of At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2 The Lawn. When Diamond got round the corner of the hay, for a moment he hesitated. The stair by which he would naturally have gone down to the door was at the other side of the loft, and looked very black indeed, for it was full of North Wind's hair, as she descended before him. And just beside him was the ladder going straight down into the stable, up which his father always came to fetch the hay for Diamond's dinner. Through the opening in the floor the faint gleam of the stable lantern was enticing, and Diamond thought he would run down that way. The stair went close past the loose box in which Diamond the horse lived. When Diamond the boy was half way down, he remembered that it was of no use to go this way, for the stable door was locked. But at the same moment there was horse Diamond's great head poked out of his box on to the ladder, for he knew boy Diamond although he was in his nightgown, and wanted him to pull his ears for him. This Diamond did very gently for a minute or so, and patted and stroked his neck too, and kissed the big horse, and had begun to take the bits of straw and hay out of his mane, when all at once he recollected that the Lady North Wind was waiting for him in the yard. "Good night, Diamond," he said, and darted up the ladder, across the loft, and down the stair to the door. But when he got out into the yard, there was no lady. Now it is always a dreadful thing to think there is somebody and find nobody. Children in particular have not made up their minds to it. They generally cry at nobody, especially when they wake up at night. But it was an especial disappointment to Diamond, for his little heart had been beating with joy. The face of the North Wind was so grand. To have a lady like that for a friend, with such long hair too, why, it was longer than 20 Diamond's tails. She was gone, and there he stood with his bare feet on the stones of the paved yard. It was a clear night overhead, and the stars were shining. Orion in particular was making the most of his bright belt and golden sword, but the moon was only a poor thin crescent. There was just one great jagged black and grey cloud in the sky, with a steep side to it like a precipice, and the moon was against this side, and looked as if she had tumbled off the top of the cloud hill and broken herself in rolling down the precipice. She did not seem comfortable, for she was looking down into the deep pit waiting for her. At least that was what Diamond thought as he stood for a moment staring at her. But he was quite wrong, for the moon was not afraid, and there was no pit she was going down into, for there were no sides to it, and a pit without sides to it is not a pit at all. Diamond, however, had not been out so late before in all his life, and things looked so strange about him, just as if he had got into fairyland, of which he knew quite as much as anybody, for his mother had no money to buy books to set him wrong on the subject. I have seen this world only sometimes, just now and then, you know, look as strange as ever I saw fairyland, but I confess that I have not yet seen fairyland at its best. I am always going to see it so sometime, but if you had been out in the face and not at the back of the North Wind, on a cold, rather frosty night, and in your nightgown, you would have felt it all quite as strange as Diamond did. He cried a little, just a little. He was so disappointed to lose the lady. Of course you, little man, wouldn't have done that. But for my part, I don't mind people crying so much as I mind what they cry about, and how they cry. Whether they cry quietly like ladies and gentlemen, or go shrieking like vulgar emperors, or ill-natured cooks. For all emperors are not gentlemen, and all cooks are not ladies, nor all queens and princesses for that matter either. But it can't be denied that a little gentle crying does one good. It did Diamond good, for as soon as it was over he was a brave boy again. "She shan't say it was my fault, anyhow," said Diamond. "I dare say she is hiding somewhere to see what I will do. I will look for her." So he went round the end of the stable towards the kitchen garden. But the moment he was clear of the shelter of the stable, sharp as a knife came the wind against his little chest and his bare legs. Still he would look in the kitchen garden, and went on. But when he got round the weeping ash that stood in the corner, the wind blew much stronger, and it grew stronger and stronger, till he could hardly fight against it, and it was so cold. All the flashy spikes of the stars seemed to have got somehow into the wind. Then he thought of what the lady had said about people being cold because they were not with the north wind. How it was that he should have guessed what she meant at that very moment, I cannot tell, but I have observed that the most wonderful thing in the world is how people come to understand anything. He turned his back to the wind, and trotted again towards the yard, whereupon, strange to say, it blew so much more gently against his calves than it had blown against his shins, that he began to feel almost warm by contrast. You must not think it was cowardly of Diamond to turn his back to the wind. He did so only because he thought Lady North Wind had said something like telling him to do so. If she had said to him that he must hold his face to it, Diamond would have held his face to it. But the most foolish thing is to fight for no good, and to please nobody. Well, it was just as if the wind was pushing Diamond along. If he turned round, it grew very sharp on his legs especially, and so he thought the wind might really be Lady North Wind, though he could not see her, and he had better let her blow him wherever she pleased. So she blew, and he went and went, until he found himself standing at a door in the wall, which door led from the yard into a little belt of shrubbery, flanking Mr. Coleman's house. Mr. Coleman was his father's master and the owner of Diamond. He opened the door and went through the shrubbery and out into the middle of the lawn, still hoping to find North Wind. The soft grass was very pleasant to his bare feet, and felt warm after the stones of the yard, but the lady was nowhere to be seen. Then he began to think that after all he must have done wrong, and she was offended with him for not following close after her, but staying to talk to the horse, which certainly was neither wise nor polite. There he stood in the middle of the lawn, the wind blowing his nightgown till it flapped like a loose sail. The stars were very shiny over his head, but they did not give light enough to show that the grass was green, and Diamond stood alone in the strange night, which looked half solid all about him. He began to wonder whether he was in a dream or not. It was important to determine this, for, thought Diamond, if I am in a dream, I am safe in my bed, and I needn't cry. But if I'm not in a dream, I'm out here, and perhaps I had better cry, or at least I'm not sure whether I can help it. He came to the conclusion, however, that whether he was in a dream or not, there could be no harm in not crying for a little while longer. He could begin whenever he liked. The back of Mr. Coleman's house was to the lawn, and one of the drawing-room windows looked out upon it. The ladies had not gone to bed, for the light was still shining in that window, but they had no idea that a little boy was standing on the lawn in his nightgown, or they would have run out in a moment. And as long as he saw that light, Diamond could not feel quite lonely. He stood staring, not at the great warrior Orion in the sky, nor yet at the disconsolate, neglected moon going down in the west, but at the drawing-room window with the light shining through its green curtains. He had been in that room once or twice that he could remember at Christmas times, for the Colemans were kind people, though they did not care much about children. All at once the light went nearly out. He could only see a glimmer of the shape of the window. Then, indeed, he felt that he was left alone. It was so dreadful to be out in the night after everybody was gone to bed. That was more than he could bear. He burst out crying in good earnest, beginning with a wail like that of the wind when it is waking up. Perhaps you think this was very foolish, for could he not go home to his own bed again when he liked? Yes, but it looked dreadful to him to creep up that stair again and lie down in his bed again, and know that North Wind's window was open beside him, and she gone, and he might never see her again. He would be just as lonely there as here. Nay, it would be much worse if he had to think that the window was nothing but a hole in the wall. At the very moment when he burst out crying, the old nurse, who had grown to be one of the family, for she had not gone away when Miss Coleman did not want any more nursing, came to the back door, which was of glass, to close the shutters. She thought she heard a cry, and, peering out with a hand on each side of her eyes like Diamond's blinkers, she saw something white on the lawn. Too old and too wise to be frightened, she opened the door, and went straight towards the white thing to see what it was. And when Diamond saw her coming he was not frightened either, though Mrs. Crump was a little cross sometimes, for there is a good kind of crossness that is only disagreeable, and there is a bad kind of crossness that is very nasty indeed. So she came up with her neck stretched out, and her head at the end of it, and her eyes foremost of all, like a snail's, peering into the night to see what it could be that went on glimmering white before her. When she did see, she made a great exclamation and threw up her hands. Then without a word, for she thought Diamond was walking in his sleep, she caught hold of him and led him towards the house. He made no objection, for he was just in the mood to be grateful for notice of any sort, and Mrs. Crump led him straight into the drawing-room. Now from the neglect of the new housemaid, the fire in Miss Coleman's bedroom had gone out, and her mother had told her to brush her hair by the drawing-room fire, a disorderly proceeding which a mother's wish could justify. The young lady was very lovely, though not nearly so beautiful as North Wind, and her hair was extremely long, for it came down to her knees, though that was nothing at all to North Wind's hair. Yet when she looked round with her hair all about her as Diamond entered, he thought for one moment that it was North Wind, and, pulling his hand from Mrs. Crump's, he stretched out his arms and ran towards Miss Coleman. She was so pleased that she threw down her brush, and almost knelt on the floor to receive him in her arms. He saw the next moment that she was not Lady North Wind, but she looked so like her he could not help running into her arms and bursting into tears afresh. Mrs. Crump said the poor child had walked out in his sleep, and Diamond thought she ought to know, and did not contradict her. For anything he knew, it might be so indeed. He let them talk on about him, and said nothing, and when, after their astonishment was over, and Miss Coleman had given him a sponge cake, it was decreed that Mrs. Crump should take him to his mother, he was quite satisfied. His mother had to get out of bed to open the door when Mrs. Crump knocked. She was indeed surprised to see her boy, and having taken him in her arms and carried him to his bed, returned and had a long confabulation with Mrs. Crump, for they were still talking when Diamond fell fast asleep and could hear them no longer. End of chapter 2. Recording by Maricel Gui. Chapter 3 of At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 3. Old Diamond. Diamond woke very early in the morning, and thought what a curious dream he had had, but the memory grew brighter and brighter in his head, until it did not look altogether like a dream, and he began to doubt whether he had not really been abroad in the wind last night. He came to the conclusion that, if he had really been brought home to his mother by Mrs. Crump, she would say something to him about it, and that would settle the matter. Then he got up and dressed himself, but finding that his father and mother were not yet stirring, he went down the ladder to the stable. There he found that even old Diamond was not awake yet, for he, as well as young Diamond, always got up the moment he woke, and now he was lying as flat as a horse could lie upon his nice trim bed of straw. "I'll give old Diamond a surprise," thought the boy, and creeping up very softly, before the horse knew, he was astride of his back. Then it was young Diamond's turn to have more of a surprise than he had expected, for as with an earthquake, with a rumbling and a rocking hither and thither, a sprawling of legs, and heaving as of many backs, young Diamond found himself hoisted up in the air, with both hands twisted in the horse's mane. The next instant old Diamond lashed out with both his hind legs, and giving one cry of terror, young Diamond found himself lying on his neck, with his arms as far round it as they would go, but then the horse stood still as a stone, except that he lifted his head gently up to let the boy slip down to his back. For when he heard young Diamond's cry, he knew that there was nothing to kick about, for young Diamond was a good boy, and old Diamond was a good horse, and the one was all right on the back of the other. As soon as Diamond had got himself comfortable on the saddle place, the horse began pulling at the hay, and the boy began thinking. He had never mounted Diamond himself before, and he had never got off him without being lifted down. So he sat, while the horse ate, wondering how he was to reach the ground. But while he meditated, his mother woke, and her first thought was to see her boy. She had visited him twice during the night, and found him sleeping quietly. Now his bed was empty, and she was frightened. "Diamond, Diamond, where are you, Diamond?" she called out. Diamond turned his head where he sat like a knight on his steed in enchanted stall, and cried aloud, "Here, mother." "Where, Diamond?" she returned. "Here, mother, on Diamond's back." She came running to the ladder, and peeping down, saw him aloft on the great horse. "Come down, Diamond," she said. "I can't," answered Diamond. "How did you get up?" asked his mother. "Quite easily," answered he. "But when I got up, Diamond would get up too, and so here I am." His mother thought he had been walking in his sleep again, and hurried down the ladder. She did not much like going up to the horse, for she had not been used to horses, but she would have gone into a lion's den, not to say a horse's stall, to help her boy. So she went and lifted him off Diamond's back, and felt braver all her life after. She carried him in her arms up to her room, but afraid of frightening him at his own sleep-walking, as she supposed it, said nothing about last night. Before the next day was over, Diamond had almost concluded the whole adventure a dream. For a week his mother watched him very carefully, going into the loft several times a night, as often in fact as she awoke. Every time she found him fast asleep. All that week it was hard weather. The grass showed white in the morning, with a hoar frost which clung like tiny comfits to every blade. And as Diamond's shoes were not good, and his mother had not quite saved up enough money to get him the new pair she so much wanted for him, she would not let him run out. He played all his games over and over indoors, especially that of driving 2 chairs harnessed to the baby's cradle, and if they did not go very fast, they went as fast as could be expected of the best chairs in the world, although one of them had only 3 legs, and the other only half a back. At length his mother brought home his new shoes, and no sooner did she find they fitted him than she told him he might run out in the yard and amuse himself for an hour. The sun was going down when he flew from the door like a bird from its cage. All the world was new to him. A great fire of sunset burned on the top of the gate that led from the stables to the house. Above the fire in the sky lay a large lake of green light, above that a golden cloud, and over that the blue of the wintry heavens. And Diamond thought that, next to his own home, he had never seen any place he would like so much to live in as that sky, for it is not fine things that make home a nice place, but your mother and your father. As he was looking at the lovely colours, the gates were thrown open, and there was old Diamond and his friend in the carriage, dancing with impatience to get at their stalls and their oats. And in they came. Diamond was not in the least afraid of his father driving over him, but, careful not to spoil the grand show he made with his fine horses and his multitudinous cape, with a red edge to every fold, he slipped out of the way and let him dash right on to the stables. To be quite safe he had to step into the recess of the door that led from the yard to the shrubbery. As he stood there he remembered how the wind had driven him to this same spot on the night of his dream, and once more he was almost sure that it was no dream. At all events he would go in and see whether things looked at all now as they did then. He opened the door and passed through the little belt of shrubbery. Not a flower was to be seen in the beds on the lawn. Even the brave old chrysanthemums and Christmas roses had passed away before the frost. What? Yes, there was one. He ran and knelt down to look at it. It was a primrose, a dwarfish thing, but perfect in shape, a baby wonder. As he stooped his face to see it close, a little wind began to blow, and 2 or 3 long leaves that stood up behind the flower shook and waved and quivered, but the primrose lay still in the green hollow, looking up at the sky, and not seeming to know that the wind was blowing at all. It was just a one eye that the dull black wintry earth had opened to look at the sky with. All at once Diamond thought it was saying its prayers, and he ought not to be staring at it so. He ran to the stable to see his father make Diamond's bed. Then his father took him in his arms, carried him up the ladder, and set him down at the table where they were going to have their tea. "Missus very poorly," said Diamond's father. "Missus has been to the doctor with her to-day, and she looked very glum when she came out again. I was a watching of them to see what the doctor had said." "And didn't Miss look glum too?" asked his mother. "Not half as glum as Missus," returned the coachman. "You see." But he lowered his voice, and Diamond could not make out more than a word here and there. For Diamond's father was not only one of the finest of coachmen to look at, and one of the best of drivers, but one of the most discreet of servants as well. Therefore he did not talk about family affairs to any one but his wife, whom he had proved better than himself long ago, and was careful that even Diamond should hear nothing he could repeat again concerning master and his family. It was bedtime soon, and Diamond went to bed and fell fast asleep. He awoke all at once in the dark. "Open the window, Diamond," said a voice. Now Diamond's mother had once more pasted up North Wind's window. "Are you North Wind?" said Diamond. "I don't hear you blowing." "No, but you hear me talking. Open the window, for I haven't over much time." "Yes," returned Diamond. "But please, North Wind, where's the use? You left me all alone last time." He had got up on his knees, and was busy with his nails once more at the paper over the hole in the wall. For now that North Wind spoke again, he remembered all that had taken place before as distinctly as if it had happened only last night. "Yes, but that was your fault," returned the North Wind. "I had work to do, and besides, a gentleman should never keep a lady waiting." "But I'm not a gentleman," said Diamond, scratching away at the paper. "I hope you won't say so 10 years after this." "I'm going to be a coachman, and a coachman is not a gentleman," persisted Diamond. "We call your father a gentleman in our house," said North Wind. "He doesn't call himself one," said Diamond. "That's of no consequence. Every man ought to be a gentleman, and your father is one." Diamond was so pleased to hear this that he scratched at the paper like 10 mice, and getting hold of the edge of it, tore it off. The next instant a young girl glided across the bed and stood upon the floor. "Oh dear!" said Diamond, quite dismayed. "I didn't know. Who are you, please?" "I'm North Wind." "Are you really?" "Yes. Make haste." "But you're no bigger than me." "Do you think I care about how big or how little I am? Didn't you see me this evening? I was less then." "No. Where was you?" "Behind the leaves of the primrose. Didn't you see them blowing?" "Yes." "Make haste then, if you want to go with me." "But you are not big enough to take care of me. I think you are only Miss North Wind." "I am big enough to show you the way anyhow. But if you won't come, why, you must stay." "I must dress myself. I didn't mind with a grown lady, but I couldn't go with a little girl in my nightgown." "Very well. I am not in such a hurry as I was the other night. Dress as fast as you can, and I'll go and shake the primrose leaves till you come." "Don't hurt it," said Diamond. North Wind broke out in a little laugh like the breaking of silver bubbles, and was gone in a moment. Diamond saw, for it was a starlit night, and the mass of hay was at a low ebb now, the gleam of something vanishing down the stair, and, springing out of bed, dressed himself as fast as ever he could. Then he crept out into the yard, through the door in the wall, and away to the primrose. Behind it stood North Wind, leaning over it, and looking at the flower as if she had been its mother. "Come along," she said, jumping up and holding out her hand. Diamond took her hand. It was cold, but so pleasant and full of life. It was better than warm. She led him across the garden. With one bound she was on the top of the wall. Diamond was left at the foot. "Stop, stop!" he cried. "Please, I can't jump like that." "You don't try," said North Wind, who from the top looked down a foot taller than before. "Give me your hand again, and I will try," said Diamond. She reached down. Diamond laid hold of her hand, gave a great spring, and stood beside her. "This is nice," he said. Another bound, and they stood in the road by the river. It was full tide, and the stars were shining clear in its depths, for it lay still, waiting for the turn to run down again to the sea. They walked along its side, but they had not walked far before its surface was covered with ripples, and the stars had vanished from its bosom. And North Wind was now tall as a full-grown girl. Her hair was flying about her head, and the wind was blowing a breeze down the river. But she turned aside and went up a narrow lane, and as she went her hair fell down around her. "I have some rather disagreeable work to do to-night," she said, "before I get out to sea, and I must set about it at once. The disagreeable work must be looked after first." So saying, she laid hold of Diamond and began to run, gliding along faster and faster. Diamond kept up with her as well as he could. She made many turnings and windings, apparently because it was not quite easy to get him over walls and houses. Once they ran through a hall where they found back and front doors open. At the foot of the stair, North Wind stood still, and Diamond, hearing a great growl, started in terror, and there, instead of North Wind, was a huge wolf by his side. He let go his hold in dismay, and the wolf bounded up the stair. The windows of the house rattled and shook as if guns were firing, and the sound of a great fall came from above. Diamond stood with white face staring up at the landing. "Surely," he thought, "North Wind can't be eating one of the children." Coming to himself all at once, he rushed after her with his little fist clenched. There were ladies in long trains going up and down the stairs, and gentlemen in white neckties attending on them, who stared at him, but none of them were of the people of the house, and they said nothing. Before he reached the head of the stair, however, North Wind met him, took him by the hand, and hurried down and out of the house. "I hope you haven't eaten a baby, North Wind," said Diamond very solemnly. North Wind laughed merrily, and went tripping on faster. Her grassy robe swept and swirled about her steps, and wherever it passed over withered leaves, they went fleeing and whirling in spirals, and running on their edges like wheels all about her feet. "No," she said at last, "I did not eat a baby. You would not have had to ask that foolish question if you had not let go your hold of me. You would have seen how I served a nurse that was calling a child bad names, and telling her she was wicked. She had been drinking. I saw an ugly gin bottle in a cupboard." "And you frightened her?" said Diamond. "I believe so," answered North Wind, laughing merrily. "I flew at her throat, and she tumbled over on the floor with such a crash that they ran in. She'll be turned away to-morrow, and quite time if they knew as much as I do." "But didn't you frighten the little one?" "She never saw me. The woman would not have seen me either if she had not been wicked." "Oh!" said Diamond, dubiously. "Why should you see things," returned North Wind, "that you wouldn't understand, or know what to do with? Good people see good things, bad people bad things." "Then you are a bad thing?" "No, for you see me, Diamond dear," said the girl, and she looked down at him, and Diamond saw the loving eyes of the great lady beaming from the depths of her falling hair. "I had to make myself look like a bad thing before she could see me. If I had put on any other shape than a wolf's, she would not have seen me, for that is what is growing to be her own shape inside of her." "I don't know what you mean," said Diamond, "but I suppose it's all right." They were now climbing the slope of a grassy ascent. It was Primrose Hill, in fact, although Diamond had never heard of it. The moment they reached the top, North Wind stood and turned her face towards London. The stars were still shining clear and cold overhead. There was not a cloud to be seen. The air was sharp, but Diamond did not find it cold. "Now," said the lady, "whatever you do, do not let my hand go. I might have lost you the last time, only I was not in a hurry then. Now I am in a hurry." Yet she stood still for a moment. End of chapter 3. Recording by Marisol Kui. Chapter 4 of At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 4. North Wind. And as she stood looking towards London, Diamond saw that she was trembling. "Are you cold, North Wind?" he asked. "No, Diamond," she answered, looking down upon him with a smile. "I am only getting ready to sweep one of my rooms. Those careless, greedy, untidy children make it in such a mess." And as she spoke, he could have told by her voice, if he had not seen with his eyes, that she was growing larger and larger. Her head went up and up towards the stars, and as she grew, still trembling through all her body, her hair also grew longer and longer, and lifted itself from her head, and went out in black waves. The next moment, however, it fell back around her, and she grew less and less, till she was only a tall woman. Then she put her hands behind her head, and gathered some of her hair, and began weaving and knotting it together. When she had done, she bent down her beautiful face close to his, and said, "Diamond, I am afraid you would not keep hold of me, and if I were to drop you, I don't know what might happen. So I have been making a place for you in my hair. Come." Diamond held out his arms, for with that grand face looking at him, he believed like a baby. She took him in her hands, threw him over her shoulder, and said, "Get in, Diamond." And Diamond parted her hair with his hands, crept between, and feeling about soon found the woven nest. It was just like a pocket, or like the shawl in which gypsy women carry their children. North Wind put her hands to her back, felt all about the nest, and, finding it safe, said, "Are you comfortable, Diamond?" "Yes, indeed," answered Diamond. The next moment he was rising in the air. North Wind grew towering up to the place of the clouds. Her hair went streaming out from her, till it spread like a mist over the stars. She flung herself abroad in space. Diamond held on by two of the twisted ropes which, parted and interwoven, formed his shelter, for he could not help being a little afraid. As soon as he had come to himself, he peeped through the woven meshes, for he did not dare to look over the top of the nest. The earth was rushing past like a river or a sea below him. Trees and water and green grass hurried away beneath. A great roar of wild animals rose as they rushed over the zoological gardens, mixed with a chattering of monkeys and a screaming of birds. But it died away in a moment behind them, and now there was nothing but the roofs of houses, sweeping along like a great torrent of stones and rocks. Chimney pots fell, and tiles flew from the roofs, but it looked to him as if they were left behind by the roofs and the chimneys as they scudded away. There was a great roaring, for the wind was dashing against London like a sea. But at North Wind's back, Diamond, of course, felt nothing of it all. He was in a perfect calm. He could hear the sound of it, that was all. By and by he raised himself and looked over the edge of his nest. There were the houses rushing up and shooting away below him, like a fierce torrent of rocks instead of water. Then he looked up to the sky, but could see no stars. They were hidden by the blinding masses of the lady's hair, which swept between. He began to wonder whether she would hear him if he spoke. He would try. "Please, North Wind," he said, "what is that noise?" From high over his head came the voice of North Wind, answering him gently. "The noise of my besom. I am the old woman that sweeps the cobwebs from the sky, only I'm busy with the floor now." "What makes the houses look as if they were running away?" "I am sweeping so fast over them." "But please, North Wind, I knew London was very big, but I didn't know it was so big as this. It seems as if we should never get away from it." "We are going round and round, else we should have left it long ago." "Is this the way you sweep, North Wind?" "Yes, I go round and round with my great besom." "Please, would you mind going a little slower, for I want to see the streets." "You won't see much now." "Why?" "Because I have nearly swept all the people home." "Oh, I forgot," said Diamond, and was quiet after that, for he did not want to be troublesome. But she dropped a little towards the roof of the houses, and Diamond could see down into the streets. There were very few people about though. The lamps flickered and flared again, but nobody seemed to want them. Suddenly Diamond espied a little girl coming along a street. She was dreadfully blown by the wind, and the broom she was trailing behind her was very troublesome. It seemed as if the wind had a spite at her. It kept worrying her like a wild beast, and tearing at her rags. She was so lonely there. "Oh, please, North Wind," he cried, "won't you help that little girl?" "No, Diamond, I mustn't leave my work." "But why shouldn't you be kind to her?" "I am kind to her. I am sweeping the wicked smells away." "But you're kinder to me, dear North Wind. Why shouldn't you be as kind to her as you are to me?" "There are reasons, Diamond. Everybody can't be done to all the same. Everybody is not ready for the same thing." "But I don't see why I should be kinder used than she." "Do you think nothing's to be done but what you can see, Diamond, you silly? It's all right. Of course you can help her if you like. You've got nothing particular to do at this moment. I have." "Oh, do let me help her, then. But you won't be able to wait, perhaps?" "No, I can't wait. You must do it yourself. And mind, the wind will get a hold of you too." "Don't you want me to help her, North Wind?" "Not without having some idea what will happen. If you break down and cry, that won't be much of a help to her, and it will make a goose of little Diamond." "I want to go," said Diamond. "Only there's just one thing. How am I to get home?" "If you're anxious about that, perhaps you had better go with me. I am bound to take you home again if you do." "There!" cried Diamond, who was still looking after the little girl. "I'm sure the wind will blow her over, and perhaps kill her. Do let me go." They had been sweeping more slowly along the line of the street. There was a lull in the roaring. "Well, though I cannot promise to take you home," said North Wind, as she sank nearer and nearer to the tops of the houses, "I can promise you it will be all right in the end. You will get home somehow. Have you made up your mind what to do?" "Yes, to help the little girl," said Diamond firmly. The same moment North Wind dropped into the street and stood, only a tall lady, but with her hair flying up over the housetops. She put her hands to her back, took Diamond, and set him down in the street. The same moment he was caught in the fierce coils of the blast, and all but blown away. North Wind stepped back a step, and at once towered in stature to the height of the houses. A chimney pot clashed at Diamond's feet. He turned in terror, but it was to look for the little girl, and when he turned again the lady had vanished, and the wind was roaring along the street as if it had been the bed of an invisible torrent. The little girl was scudding before the blast, her hair flying too, and behind her she dragged her broom. Her little legs were going as fast as ever they could to keep her from falling. Diamond crept into the shelter of a doorway, thinking to stop her, but she passed him like a bird, crying gently and pitifully. "Stop, stop, little girl!" shouted Diamond, starting in pursuit. "I can't," wailed the girl. "The wind won't leave go of me." Diamond could run faster than she, and he had no broom. In a few moments he had caught her by the frock, but it tore in his hand, and away went the little girl. So he had to run again, and this time he ran so fast that he got before her, and turning round, caught her in his arms, when down they went both together, which made the little girl laugh in the midst of her crying. "Where are you going?" asked Diamond, rubbing the elbow that had stuck farthest out. The arm it belonged to was twined round the lamp post as he stood between the little girl and the wind. "Home," she said, gasping for breath. "Then I will go with you," said Diamond. And then they were silent for a while, for the wind blew worse than ever, and they had both to hold on to the lamp post. "Where is your crossing?" asked the girl at length. "I don't sweep," answered Diamond. "What do you do then?" asked she. "You ain't big enough for most things." "I don't know what I do," answered he, feeling rather ashamed. "Nothing, I suppose. My father's Mr. Coleman's coachman." "Have you a father?" she said, staring at him as if a boy with a father was a natural curiosity. "Yes. Haven't you?" returned Diamond. "No, nor mother neither. Old Sal's all I've got." And she began to cry again. "I wouldn't go to her if she wasn't good to me," said Diamond. "But you must go somewheres." "Move on," said the voice of a policeman behind them. "I told you so," said the girl. "You must go somewheres. They're always at it." "But old Sal doesn't beat you, does she?" "I wish she would." "What do you mean?" asked Diamond, quite bewildered. "She would if she was my mother, but she wouldn't lie abed, a cuddling of her ugly old bones, and laugh to hear me crying at the door." "You don't mean she won't let you in to night?" "It'll be a good chance if she does." "Why are you out so late then?" asked Diamond. "My crossing's a long way off at West End, and I had been indulging in doorsteps and mewses." "We'd better have a try anyhow," said Diamond. "Come along." As he spoke, Diamond thought he caught a glimpse of North Wind turning a corner in front of them, and when they turned the corner too, they found it quiet there, but he saw nothing of the lady. "Now you lead me," he said, taking her hand, "and I'll take care of you." The girl withdrew her hand, but only to dry her eyes with her frock, for the other had enough to do with her broom. She put it in his again and led him, turning after turning, until they stopped at a cellar door in a very dirty lane. There she knocked. "I shouldn't like to live here," said Diamond. "Oh yes, you would, if you had nowhere else to go to," answered the girl. "I only wish we may get in." "I don't want to go in," said Diamond. "Where do you mean to go then?" "Home, to my home." "Where is that?" "I don't exactly know." "Then you're worse off than I am." "Oh no, for North Wind," began Diamond, and stopped, he hardly knew why. "What?" said the girl, as she held her ear to the door, listening. But Diamond did not reply, neither did old Sal. "I told you so," said the girl. "She is wide awake hearkening, but we don't get in." "What will you do then?" asked Diamond. "Move on," she answered. "Where?" "Oh, anywheres. Bless you, I'm used to it." "Hadn't you better come home with me then?" "That's a good joke, when you don't know where it is. Come on." "But where?" "Oh, nowheres in particular. Come on." Diamond obeyed. The wind had now fallen considerably. They wandered on and on, turning in this direction and that, without any reason for one way more than another, until they had got out of the thick of the houses into a waste kind of place. But this time they were both very tired. Diamond felt a good deal inclined to cry, and thought he had been very silly to get down from the back of North Wind. Not that he would have minded it if he had done the girl any good, but he thought he had been of no use to her. He was mistaken there, for she was far happier for having Diamond with her than if she had been wandering about alone. She did not seem so tired as he was. "Do let us rest a bit," said Diamond. "Let's see," she answered. "There's something like a railway there. Perhaps there's an open arch." They went towards it and found one, and, better still, there was an empty barrel lying under the arch. "Hello, here we are!" said the girl. "A barrel's the jolliest bet going. On the tramp, I mean. We'll have 40 winks, and then go on again." She crept in, and Diamond crept in beside her. They put their arms round each other, and when he began to grow warm, Diamond's courage began to come back. "This is jolly," he said. "I'm so glad." "I don't think so much of it," said the girl. "I'm used to it, I suppose. But I can't think how a kid like you comes to be out all alone this time o' night." She called him a kid, but she was not really a month older than he was, only she had had to work for her bread, and that so soon makes people older. "But I shouldn't have been out so late if I hadn't got down to help you," said Diamond. "North Wind is gone home long ago." "I think you must ha' got out o' one o' them hidget asylums," said the girl. "You said something about the north wind afore that I couldn't get the rights of." So now, for the sake of his character, Diamond had to tell her the whole story. She did not believe a word of it. She said he wasn't such a flat as to believe all that bosh. But as she spoke, there came a great blast of wind through the arch, and set the barrel rolling. So they made haste to get out of it, for they had no notion of being rolled over and over as if they had been packed tight and wouldn't hurt, like a barrel of herrings. "I thought we should have had a sleep," said Diamond, "but I can't say I'm very sleepy after all. Come, let's go on again." They wandered on and on, sometimes sitting on a doorstep, but always turning into lanes or fields when they had a chance. They found themselves at last on a rising ground that sloped rather steeply on the other side. It was a waste kind of spot below, bounded by an irregular wall with a few doors in it. Outside lay broken things in general, from garden rollers to flower pots and wine bottles. But the moment they reached the brow of the rising ground, a gust of wind seized them, and blew them downhill as fast as they could run. Nor could Diamond stop before he went bang against one of the doors in the wall. To his dismay it burst open. When they came to themselves they peeped in. It was the back door of a garden. "Ah! Ah!" cried Diamond, after staring for a few moments. "I thought so. North Wind takes nobody in. Here I am in master's garden. I tell you what, little girl, you just bore a hole in old Sal's wall, and put your mouth to it, and say, 'Please, North Wind, mayn't I go out with you?' and then you'll see what'll come." "I dare say I shall, but I'm out in the wind too often already to want more of it." "I said with the north wind, not in it." "It's all one." "It's not all one." "It is all one." "But I know best." "And I know better. I'll box your ears," said the girl. Diamond got very angry, but he remembered that even if she did box his ears, he mustn't box hers again, for she was a girl, and all that boys must do, if girls are rude, is to go away and leave them. So he went in at the door. "Good bye, mister," said the girl. This brought Diamond to his senses. "I'm sorry I was cross," he said. "Come in, and my mother will give you some breakfast." "No, thank you. I must be off to my crossing. It's morning now." "I'm very sorry for you," said Diamond. "Well, it is a life to be tired of, what with old Sal and so many holes in my shoes." "I wonder you're so good. I should kill myself." "Oh no, you wouldn't. When I think of it, I always want to see what's coming next, and so I always wait till next is over. Well, I suppose there's somebody happy somewheres, but it ain't in them carriages. Oh my! How they do look sometimes! Fit to bite your head off. Good bye." She ran up the hill and disappeared behind it. Then Diamond shut the door as he best could, and ran through the kitchen garden to the stable. And wasn't he glad to get into his own blessed bed again. End of chapter 4. Recording by Marisol Kui. Chapter 5 of At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5. The Summer House. Diamond said nothing to his mother about his adventures. He had half a notion that North Wind was a friend of his mother, and that if she did not know all about it, at least she did not mind his going anywhere with the Lady of the Wind. At the same time, he doubted whether he might not appear to be telling stories if he told all, especially as he could hardly believe it himself when he thought about it in the middle of the day, although when the twilight was once half way on to the night, he had no doubt about it, at least for the first few days after he had been with her. The girl that swept the crossing had certainly refused to believe him. Besides, he felt sure that North Wind would tell him if he ought to speak. It was some time before he saw the Lady of the Wind again. Indeed, nothing remarkable took place in Diamond's history until the following week. This was what happened then. Diamond the horse wanted new shoes, and Diamond's father took him out of the stable, and was just getting on his back to ride him to the forge, when he saw his little boy standing by the pump, and looking at him wistfully. Then the coachman took his foot out of the stirrup, left his hold of the mane and bridle, came across to his boy, lifted him up, and setting him on the horse's back, told him to sit up like a man. He then led away both Diamonds together. The boy atop felt not a little tremulous as the great muscles that lifted the legs of the horse knotted and relaxed against his legs, and he cowered towards the withers, grasping with his hands the bit of mane worn short by the collar. But when his father looked back at him, saying once more, "Sit up, Diamond," he let the mane go and sat up, notwithstanding that the horse, thinking, I suppose, that his master had said to him, "Come up, Diamond," stepped out faster. For both the Diamonds were just grandly obedient, and Diamond soon found that, as he was obedient to his father, so the horse was obedient to him. For he had not ridden far before he found courage to reach forward and catch hold of the bridle, and when his father, whose hand was upon it, felt the boy pull it towards him, he looked up and smiled, and, well pleased, let go his hold, and left Diamond to guide Diamond, and the boy soon found that he could do so perfectly. It was a grand thing to be able to guide a great beast like that, and another discovery he made was that, in order to guide the horse, he had in a measure to obey the horse first. If he did not yield his body to the motions of the horse's body, he could not guide him. He must fall off. The blacksmith lived at some distance deeper into London. As they crossed the angle of a square, Diamond, who was now quite comfortable on his living throne, was glancing this way and that in a gentle pride, when he saw a girl sweeping a crossing scuddingly before a lady. The lady was his father's mistress, Mrs. Coleman, and the little girl was she for whose sake he had got off North Wind's back. He drew Diamond's bridle in eager anxiety to see whether her outstretched hand would gather a penny from Mrs. Coleman, but she had given one at the last crossing, and the hand returned only to grasp its broom. Diamond could not bear it. He had a penny in his pocket, a gift of the same lady the day before, and he tumbled off his horse to give it to the girl. He tumbled off, I say, for he did tumble when he reached the ground. But he got up in an instant, and ran, searching his pocket as he ran. She made him a pretty curtsy when he offered his treasure, but with a bewildered stare. She thought first, then he was on the back of the North Wind after all. But, looking up at the sound of the horse's feet on the paved crossing, she changed her idea, saying to herself, "North Wind is his father's horse. That's the secret of it. Why couldn't he say so?" And she had a mind to refuse the penny. But his smile put it all right, and she not only took his penny, but put it in her mouth with a "Thank you, mister. Did they wallop you, then?" "Oh no," answered Diamond. "They never wallops me." "Lor!" said the little girl, and was speechless. Meantime his father, looking up, and seeing the horse's back bare, suffered a pang of awful dread, but the next moment catching sight of him, took him up and put him on, saying, "Don't get off again, Diamond. The horse might have put his foot on you." "No, father," answered the boy, and rode on in majestic safety. The summer drew near, warm and splendid. Miss Coleman was a little better in health, and sat a good deal in the garden. One day she saw Diamond peeping through the shrubbery, and called him. He talked to her so frankly that she often sent for him after that, and by degrees it came about that he had leave to run in the garden as he pleased. He never touched any of the flowers or blossoms, for he was not like some boys who cannot enjoy a thing without pulling it to pieces, and so preventing every one from enjoying it after them. A week even makes such a long time in a child's life that Diamond had begun once more to feel as if North Wind were a dream of some far off year. One hot evening he had been sitting with a young mistress, as they called her, in a little summer house at the bottom of the lawn, a wonderful thing for beauty, the boy thought, for a little window in the side of it was made of coloured glass. It grew dusky, and the lady began to feel chill, and went in, leaving the boy in the summer house. He sat there gazing out at a bed of tulips, which, although they had closed for the night, could not go quite asleep for the wind that kept waving them about. All at once he saw a great bumble bee fly out of one of the tulips. "There, that is something done," said a voice, a gentle, merry, childish voice, but so tiny. "At last it was. I thought he would have had to stay there all night. Poor fellow, I did." Diamond could not tell whether the voice was near or far away, it was so small and yet so clear. He had never seen a fairy, but he had heard of such, and he began to look all about for one. And there was the tiniest creature sliding down the stem of the tulip. "Are you the fairy that herds the bees?" he asked, going out of the summer house, and down on his knees on the green shore of the tulip bed. "I am not a fairy," answered the little creature. "How do you know that?" "It would become you better to ask how you are to know it." "You've just told me." "Yes, but what's the use of knowing a thing only because you're told it?" "Well, how am I to know you are not a fairy? You do look very like one." "In the first place, fairies are much bigger than you see me." "Oh!" said Diamond reflectively. "I thought they were very little." "But they might be tremendously bigger than I am, and yet not very big. Why, I could be 6 times the size I am, and not be very huge. Besides, a fairy can't grow big and little at will, though the nursery tales do say so. They don't know better. You stupid Diamond, have you never seen me before?" And as she spoke, a moan of wind bent the tulips almost to the ground, and the creature laid her hand on Diamond's shoulder. In a moment he knew that it was North Wind. "I am very stupid," he said, "but I never saw you so small before, not even when you were nursing the primrose." "Must you see me every size that can be measured before you know me, Diamond?" "But how could I think it was you taking care of a great stupid bumblebee?" "The more stupid he was, the more need he had to be taken care of. What with sucking honey and trying to open the door, he was nearly dated. And when it opened in the morning to let the sun see the tulip's heart, what would the sun have thought to find such a stupid thing lying there, with wings too?" "But how do you have time to look after bees?" "I don't look after bees. I had this one to look after. It was hard work, though." "Hard work! Why, you could blow a chimney down, or a boy's cap off," said Diamond. "Both are easier than to blow a tulip open. But I scarcely know the difference between hard and easy. I am always able for what I have to do. When I see my work, I just rush at it, and it is done. But I mustn't chatter. I have got to sink a ship to-night." "Sink a ship! What, with men in it?" "Yes, and women too." "How dreadful! I wish you wouldn't talk so." "It is rather dreadful, but it is my work. I must do it." "I hope you won't ask me to go with you." "No, I won't ask you, but you must come for all that." "I won't then." "Won't you?" And North Wind grew a tall lady, and looked him in the eyes, and Diamond said, "Please take me. You cannot be cruel." "No, I could not be cruel if I would. I can do nothing cruel, although I often do what looks like cruel to those who do not know what I really am doing. The people they say I drown, I only carry away to well, the back of the north wind. That is what they used to call it long ago, only I never saw the place." "How can you carry them there if you never saw it?" "I know the way." "But how is it you never saw it?" "Because it is behind me." "But you can look around." "Not far enough to see my own back. No, I always look before me. In fact, I grow quite blind and deaf when I try to see my back. I only mind my work." "But how does it be your work?" "Ah, that I can't tell you. I only know it is, because when I do it I feel all right, and when I don't I feel all wrong. East Wind says only one does not exactly know how much to believe of what she says, for she is very naughty sometimes. She says it is all managed by a baby, but whether she is good or naughty when she says that, I don't know. I just stick to my work. It is all one to me to let a bee out of a tulip, or to sweep the cobwebs from the sky. You would like to go with me to-night?" "I don't want to see a ship sunk." "But suppose I had to take you?" "Why, then, of course I must go." "There's a good Diamond. I think I had better be growing a bit. Only you must go to bed first. I can't take you till you're in bed. That's the law about the children. So I had better go and do something else first." "Very well, North Wind," said Diamond. "What are you going to do first, if you please?" "I think I may tell you. Jump up on the top of the wall there." "I can't." "Ah, and I can't help you. You haven't been to bed yet, you see. Come out to the road with me, just in front of the coach house, and I will show you." North Wind grew very small indeed, so small that she could not have blown the dust off a dusty miller, as the Scotch children call a yellow auricula. Diamond could not even see the blades of grass move as she flitted along by his foot. They left the lawn, went out by the wicket in the coach house gates, and then crossed the road to the low wall that separated it from the river. "You can get up on this wall, Diamond," said North Wind. "Yes, but my mother has forbidden me." "Then don't," said North Wind. "But I can see over," said Diamond. "Ah, to be sure! I can't." So saying, North Wind gave a little bound, and stood on top of the wall. She was just about the height a dragon fly would be if it stood on end. "You darling!" said Diamond, seeing what a lovely little toy woman she was. "Don't be impertinent, Master Diamond," said North Wind. "If there's one thing makes me more angry than another, it is the way you humans judge things by their size. I am quite as respectable now as I shall be 6 hours after this, when I take an East Indiaman by the royals, twist her round, and push her under. You have no right to address me in such a fashion." But as she spoke, the tiny face wore a smile of a great, grand woman. She was only having her own beautiful fun out of Diamond, and true woman's fun never hurts. "But look there," she resumed. "Do you see a boat with one man in it? A green and white boat?" "Yes, quite well." "That's a poet." "I thought you said it was a boat." "Stupid pet! Don't you know what a poet is?" Why, a thing to sail on the water in. Well, perhaps you're not so far wrong. Some poets do carry people over the sea, but I have no business to talk so much. The man is a poet. The boat is a boat, said Diamond. Can't you spell? asked North Wind. Not very well. So I see. A poet is not a boat, as you call it. A poet is a man who is glad of something, and tries to make other people glad of it too. Ah, now I know. Like the man in the sweetie shop. Not very, but I see it is no use. I wasn't sent to tell you, and so I can't tell you. I must be off. Only first just look at the man. He's not much of a rower, said Diamond, paddling first with one fin and then with the other. Now look here, said North Wind, and she flashed like a dragon-fly across the water, whose surface rippled and puckered as she passed. The next moment the man in the boat glanced about him and bent to his oars. The boat flew over the rippling water. Man and boat and river were awake. The same instant almost, North Wind perched again upon the river wall. "How did you do that?" asked Diamond. "I blew in his face," answered North Wind. "I don't see how that could do it," said Diamond. "I dare say not, and therefore you will say you don't believe it could." "No, no, dear North Wind. I know you too well not to believe you." "Well, I blew in his face, and that woke him up." "But what was the good of it?" "Why, don't you see? Look at him, how he is pulling. I blew the mist out of him." "How was that?" "That is just what I cannot tell you." "But you did it." "Yes. I have to do 10,000 things without being able to tell how." "I don't like that," said Diamond. He was staring after the boat. Hearing no answer, he looked down to the wall. North Wind was gone. Away across the river went a long ripple, what sailors call a cat's paw. The man in the boat was putting up a sail. The moon was coming to herself on the edge of a great cloud, and the sail began to shine white. Diamond rubbed his eyes, and wondered what it was all about. Things seemed going on around him, and all to understand each other, but he could make nothing of it. So he put his hands in his pockets, and went in to have his tea. The night was very hot, for the wind had fallen again. "You don't seem very well to-night, Diamond," said his mother. "I am quite well, mother," returned Diamond, who was only puzzled. "I think you had better go to bed," she added. "Very well, mother," he answered. He stopped for one moment to look out of the window. Above the moon the clouds were going different ways. Somehow or other this troubled him, but notwithstanding, he was soon fast asleep. He woke in the middle of the night and the darkness. A terrible noise was rumbling overhead, like the rolling beat of great drums echoing through a brazen vault. The roof of the loft in which he lay had no ceiling, only the tiles were between him and the sky. For a while he could not come quite awake, for the noise kept beating him down, so that his heart was troubled and fluttered painfully. A second peal of thunder burst over his head, and almost choked him with fear. Nor did he recover until the great blast that followed, having torn some tiles off the roof, sent a spout of wind down into his bed and over his face, which brought him wide awake, and gave him back his courage. The same moment he heard a mighty yet musical voice calling him. "Come up, Diamond," it said. "It's all ready. I'm waiting for you." He looked out of the bed and saw a gigantic, powerful, but most lovely arm, with a hand whose fingers were nothing the less ladylike that they could have strangled a boa constrictor, or choked a tigress off its prey, stretched down through a big hole in the roof. Without a moment's hesitation, he reached out his tiny one, and laid it in the grand palm before him. End of chapter 5. Recording by Maricel Kui. Chapter 6 of At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 6 Out in the Storm. The hand felt its way up his arm, and, grasping it gently and strongly above the elbow, lifted Diamond from the bed. The moment he was through the hole in the roof, all the winds of heaven seemed to lay hold upon him, and buffet him hither and thither. His hair blew one way, his nightgown another, his legs threatened to float from under him, and his head to grow dizzy with the swiftness of the invisible assailant. Cowering, he clung with the other hand to the huge hand which held his arm, and fear invaded his heart. "Oh, North Wind!" he murmured. But the words vanished from his lips as he had seen the soap bubbles that burst too soon vanish from the mouth of his pipe. The wind caught them, and they were nowhere. They couldn't get out at all, but were torn away and strangled. And yet North Wind heard them, and in her answer it seemed to Diamond that just because she was so big and could not help it, and just because her ear and her mouth must seem to him so dreadfully far away, she spoke to him more tenderly and graciously than ever before. Her voice was like the bass of a deep organ, without the groan in it, like the most delicate of violin tones, without the wail in it, like the most glorious of trumpet ejaculations, without the defiance in it, like the sound of falling water, without the clatter and clash in it. It was like all of them and neither of them, all of them without their faults, each of them without its peculiarity. After all, it was more like his mother's voice than anything else in the world. "Diamond, dear," she said, "be a man. What is fearful to you is not the least fearful to me." "But it can't hurt you," murmured Diamond, "for you're it." "Then if I'm it, and have you in my arms, how can it hurt you?" "Oh yes, I see," whispered Diamond. "But it looks so dreadful, and it pushes me about so." "Yes, it does, my dear. That is what it was sent for." At the same moment a peal of thunder which shook Diamond's heart against the sides of his bosom hurtled out of the heavens. I cannot say out of the sky, for there was no sky. Diamond had not seen the lightning, for he had been intent on finding the face of North Wind. Every moment the folds of her garment would sweep across his eyes and blind him, but between he could just persuade himself that he saw great glories of women's eyes looking down through rifts in the mountainous clouds over his head. He trembled so at the thunder that his knees failed him, and he sunk down at North Wind's feet, and clasped her round the column of her ankle. She instantly stooped, lifted him from the roof, up into her bosom, and held him there, saying, as if to an inconsolable child, "Diamond, dear, this will never do." "Oh yes, it will," answered Diamond. "I am all right now, quite comfortable, I assure you, dear North Wind. If you will only let me stay here, I shall be all right indeed." "But you will feel the wind here, Diamond." "I don't mind that a bit, so long as I feel your arms through it," answered Diamond, nestling closer to her grand bosom. "Brave boy!" returned North Wind, pressing him closer. "No," said Diamond, "I don't see that. It's not courage at all, so long as I feel you there." "But hadn't you better get into my hair? Then you would not feel the wind. You will hear." "Ah, but dear North Wind, you don't know how nice it is to feel your arms about me. It is 1,000 times better to have them and the wind together, than to have only your hair and the back of your neck, and no wind at all." "But it is surely more comfortable there?" "Well, perhaps, but I begin to think there are better things than being comfortable." "Yes, indeed there are. Well, I will keep you in front of me. You will feel the wind, but not too much. I shall only want one arm to take care of you. The other will be quite enough to sink the ship." "Oh, dear North Wind, how can you talk so?" "My dear boy, I never talk. I always mean what I say." "Then you do mean to sink the ship with the other hand?" "Yes." "It is not like you." How do you know that? Quite easily. Here you are taking care of a poor little boy with one arm, and there you are sinking a ship with the other. It can't be like you. Ah, but which is me? I can't be two me's, you know. No, nobody can be two me's. Well, which me is me? Now I must think. There looks to be two. Yes, that's the very point. You can't be knowing the thing you don't know, can you? No? Which me do you know? The kindest, goodest, best me in the world, answered Diamond, clinging to North Wind. Why am I good to you? I don't know. Have you ever done anything for me? No. Then I must be good to you because I choose to be good to you. Yes. Why should I choose? Because you like. Why should I like to be good to you? I don't know, except it be because it's good to be good to me. That's just it. I am good to you because I like to be good. Then why shouldn't you be good to other people as well as to me? That's just what I don't know. Why shouldn't I? I don't know either. Then why shouldn't you? Because I am. There it is again, said Diamond. I don't see that you are. It looks quite the other thing. Well, but listen to me, Diamond. You know the one me, you say, and that is good. Yes. Do you know the other me as well? No, I can't. I shouldn't like to. There it is. You don't know the other me. You are sure of one of them? Yes. And you are sure there can't be two me's? Yes. Then the me you don't know must be the same as the me you do know, else there would be two me's? Yes. Then the other me you don't know must be as kind as the me you do know? Yes. Besides, I tell you that it is so, only it doesn't look like it. That I confess freely. Have you anything more to object? No, no, dear North Wind, I am quite satisfied. Then I will tell you something you might object. You might say that the me you know is like the other me, and that I am cruel all through. I know that can't be true, because you are so kind. But that kindness might be only a pretence for the sake of being more cruel afterwards. Diamond clung to her tighter than ever, crying, No, no, dear North Wind, I can't believe that. I don't believe it. I won't believe it. That would kill me. I love you, and you must love me, else how did I come to love you? How could you know how to put on such a beautiful face if you did not love me and the rest? No, you may sink as many ships as you like, and I won't say another word. I can't say I shall like to see it, you know. That's quite another thing, said North Wind, and as she spoke, she gave one spring from the roof of the hayloft, and rushed up into the clouds, with Diamond on her left arm close to her heart. And as if the clouds knew she had come, they burst into a fresh jubilation of thunderous light. For a few moments Diamond seemed to be borne up through the depths of an ocean of dazzling flame. The next, the winds were writhing around him like a storm of serpents, for they were in the midst of the clouds and mists, and they, of course, took the shapes of the wind, eddying and wreathing and whirling and shooting and dashing about like grey and black water, so that it was as if the wind itself had taken shape, and he saw the grey and black wind tossing and raving most madly all about him. Now it blinded him by smiting him upon the eyes. Now it deafened him by bellowing in his ears. For even when the thunder came, he knew now that it was the billows of the great ocean of the air dashing against each other in their haste to fill the hollow scooped out by the lightning. Now it took his breath quite away by sucking it from his body with the speed of its rush. But he did not mind it. He only gasped first, and then laughed, for the arm of North Wind was about him, and he was leaning against her bosom. It is quite impossible for me to describe what he saw. Did you ever watch a great wave shoot into a winding passage amongst rocks? If you ever did, you would see that the water rushed every way at once, some of it even turning back and opposing the rest. Greater confusion you might see nowhere, except in a crowd of frightened people. Well, the wind was like that, except that it went much faster, and therefore was much wilder, and twisted and shot and curled and dodged and clashed and raved 10 times more madly than anything else in creation except human passions. Diamond saw the threads of the lady's hair streaking it all. In parts indeed he could not tell which was hair, and which was black storm and vapour. It seemed sometimes that all the great billows of mist-muddy wind were woven out of the crossing lines of North Wind's infinite hair, sweeping in endless intertwistings, and Diamond felt as the wind seized on his hair, which his mother kept rather long, as if he too was a part of the storm, and some of its life went out from him. But so sheltered was he by North Wind's arm and bosom, that only at times, in the fiercer onslaught of some curl-billowed eddy, did he recognize for a moment how wild was the storm in which he was carried, nestling in its very core and formative centre. It seemed to Diamond likewise that they were motionless in this centre, and that all the confusion and fighting went on around them. Flash after flash illuminated the fierce chaos, revealing in varied yellow and blue and grey and dusky red the vaporous contention. Peal after peal of thunder tore the infinite waste, but it seemed to Diamond that North Wind and he were motionless, all but the hair. It was not so. They were sweeping with the speed of the wind itself towards the sea. End of chapter 6. Recording by Maricel Kui. Chapter 7 of At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 7. The Cathedral. I must not go on describing what cannot be described, for nothing is more wearisome. Before they reached the sea, Diamond felt North Wind's hair just beginning to fall about him. "Is the storm over, North Wind?" he called out. "No, Diamond. I am only waiting a moment to set you down. You would not like to see the ship sunk, and I am going to give you a place to stop in till I come back for you." "Oh, thank you," said Diamond. "I shall be sorry to leave you, North Wind, but I would rather not see the ship go down, and I'm afraid the poor people will cry, and I should hear them. Oh dear!" "There are a good many passengers on board, and to tell the truth, Diamond, I don't care about your hearing the cry you speak of. I am afraid you would not get it out of your little head again for a long time." "But how can you bear it then, North Wind? For I am sure you are kind. I shall never doubt that again." "I will tell you how I am able to bear it, Diamond. I am always hearing, through every noise, through all the noise I am making myself even, the sound of a far-off song. I do not exactly know where it is, or what it means, and I don't hear much of it, only the odour of its music, as it were, flitting across the great billows of the ocean outside this air in which I make such a storm. But what I do hear is quite enough to make me able to bear the cry from the drowning ship. So it would you if you could hear it." "No, it wouldn't," returned Diamond stoutly, "for they wouldn't hear the music of the far-away song, and if they did, it wouldn't do them any good. You see, you and I are not going to be drowned, and so we might enjoy it." "But you have never heard the psalm, and you don't know what it is like. Somehow, I can't say how, it tells me that all is right, that it is coming to swallow up all cries." "But that won't do them any good, the people, I mean," persisted Diamond. "It must, said North Wind hurriedly. It wouldn't be the song it seems to be, if it did not swallow up all their fear and pain too, and set them singing it themselves with the rest. I am sure it will. And do you know, ever since I knew I had hair, that is, ever since it began to go out and away, that song has been coming nearer and nearer. Only I must say it was some 1,000 years before I heard it. But how can you say it was coming nearer when you did not hear it? Asked doubting little Diamond. Since I began to hear it, I know it is growing louder. Therefore I judge it was coming nearer and nearer until I did hear it first. I'm not so very old, you know, a few 1,000 years only, and I was quite a baby when I heard the noise first, but I knew it must come from the voices of people ever so much older and wiser than I was. I can't sing at all, except now and then, and I can never tell what my song is going to be. I only know what it is after I have sung it. But this will never do. Will you stop here? I can't see anywhere to stop, said Diamond. Your hair is all down like a darkness, and I can't see through it if I knock my eyes into it ever so much. Look, then, said North Wind, and with one sweep of her great white arm she swept yards deep of darkness like a great curtain from before the face of the boy. And lo, it was a blue night, lit up with stars. Where it did not shine with stars, it shimmered with the milk of the stars, except where, just opposite to Diamond's face, the grey towers of a cathedral blotted out each its own shape of sky and stars. "Oh, what's that?" cried Diamond, struck with a kind of terror, for he had never seen a cathedral, and it rose before him with an awful reality in the midst of the wide spaces, conquering emptiness with grandeur. "A very good place for you to wait in," said North Wind. "But we shall go in, and you shall judge for yourself." There was an open door in the middle of one of the towers, leading out upon the roof, and through it they passed. Then North Wind set Diamond on his feet, and he found himself at the top of a stone stair, which went twisting away down into the darkness, for only a little light came in at the door. It was enough, however, to allow Diamond to see that North Wind stood beside him. He looked up to find her face, and saw that she was no longer a beautiful giantess, but the tall gracious lady he liked best to see. She took his hand, and giving him the broad part of the spiral stair to walk on, led him down a good way. Then, opening another little door, led him out upon a narrow gallery that ran all round the central part of the church, on the ledges of the windows of the clerestory, and through openings in the parts of the wall that divided the windows from each other. It was very narrow, and except when they were passing through the wall, Diamond saw nothing to keep him from falling into the church. It lay below him like a great silent gulf hollowed in stone, and he held his breath for fear as he looked down. "What are you trembling for, little Diamond?" said the lady, as she walked gently along, with her hand held out behind her leading him, for there was not breadth enough for them to walk side by side. "I am afraid of falling down there," answered Diamond. "It is so deep down." "Yes, rather," answered North Wind, "but you were 100 times higher a few minutes ago." "Ah, yes, but somebody's arm was about me then," said Diamond, putting his little mouth to the beautiful cold hand that had got a hold of his. "What a dear little warm mouth you've got," said North Wind. "It is a pity you should talk nonsense with it. Don't you know I have a hold of you?" "Yes, but I am walking on my own legs, and they might slip. I can't trust myself so well as your arms." "But I have a hold of you, I tell you, foolish child." "Yes, but somehow I can't feel comfortable." "If you were to fall, and my hold of you were to give way, I should be down after you in a less moment than a lady's watch can tick, and catch you long before you had reached the ground." "I don't like it, though," said Diamond. "Oh, oh, oh!" he screamed the next moment, bent double with terror, for North Wind had let go her hold of his hand and had vanished, leaving him standing as if rooted to the gallery. She left the words, "Come after me," sounding in his ears. But move he dared not. In a moment more he would from very terror have fallen into the church, but suddenly there came a gentle breath of cool wind upon his face, and it kept blowing upon him in little puffs, and at every puff Diamond felt his faintness going away, and his fear with it. Courage was reviving in his little heart, and still the cool wafts of the soft wind breathed upon him, and the soft wind was so mighty and strong within its gentleness, that in a minute more Diamond was marching along the narrow ledge, as fearless for the time as North Wind herself. He walked on, with the windows all in a row on one side of him, and the great empty nave of the church echoing to every one of his brave strides on the other, until at last he came to a little open door, from which a broader stair led him down and down and down, till at last all at once he found himself in the arms of North Wind, who held him close to her and kissed him on the forehead. Diamond nestled to her, and murmured into her bosom, "Why did you leave me, dear North Wind?" "Because I wanted you to walk alone," she answered. "But it is so much nicer here," said Diamond. "I dare say, but I couldn't hold a little coward to my heart. It would make me so cold." "But I wasn't brave of myself," said Diamond, whom my older readers will have already discovered to be a true child in this, that he was given to metaphysics. "It was the wind that blew in my face that made me brave. Wasn't it now, North Wind?" "Yes, I know that. You had to be taught what courage was, and you couldn't know what it was without feeling it. Therefore it was given you. But don't you feel as if you would try to be brave yourself next time?" "Yes, I do. But trying is not much." "Yes, it is. A very great deal, for it is a beginning, and a beginning is the greatest thing of all. To try to be brave is to be brave. The coward who tries to be brave is before the man who is brave, because he is made so, and never had to try." "How kind you are, North Wind." "I am only just. All kindness is but justice. We owe it." "I don't quite understand that." "Never mind. You will some day. There is no hurry about understanding it now." "Who blew the wind on me that made me brave?" "I did." "I didn't see you." "Therefore you can believe me." "Yes, yes, of course. But how was it that such a little breath could be so strong?" "That I don't know." "But you made it strong?" "No, I only blew it. I knew it would make you strong, just as it did the man in the boat, you remember. But how my breath has that power I cannot tell. It was put into it when I was made. That is all I know. But really I must be going about my work." "Ah, the poor ship! I wish you would stop here, and let the poor ship go." "That I dare not do. Will you stop here till I come back?" "Yes. You won't be long?" "Not longer than I can help. Trust me, you shall get home before the morning." In a moment North Wind was gone, and the next Diamond heard a moaning about the church, which grew and grew to a roaring. The storm was up again, and he knew that North Wind's hair was flying. The church was dark. Only a little light came through the windows, which were almost all of that precious old stained glass which is so much lovelier than the new. But Diamond could not see how beautiful they were, for there was not enough of light in the stars to show the colours of them. He could only just distinguish them from the walls. He looked up, but could not see the gallery along which he had passed. He could only tell where it was far up by the faint glimmer of the windows of the clear story, whose sills made part of it. The church grew very lonely about him, and he began to feel like a child whose mother had forsaken it. Only he knew that to be left alone is not always to be forsaken. He began to feel his way about the place, and for a while went wandering up and down. His little footsteps waked little answering echoes in the great house. It wasn't too big to mind him. It was as if the church knew he was there, and meant to make itself his house. So it went on giving back an answer to every step, until at length Diamond thought he should like to say something out loud, and see what the church would answer. But he found he was afraid to speak. He could not utter a word for fear of the loneliness. Perhaps it was just as well that he did not, for the sound of a spoken word would have made him feel the place yet more deserted and empty. But he thought he could sing. He was fond of singing, and at home he used to sing to tunes of his own, all the nursery rhymes he knew. So he began to try "Hey diddle diddle," but it wouldn't do. Then he tried "Little Boy Blue," but it was no better. Neither would "Sing a Song of Sixpence" sing itself at all. Then he tried "Poor Old Cockatoo," but he wouldn't do. They all sounded so silly, and he had never thought them silly before. So he was quiet, and listened to the echoes that came out of the dark corners in answer to his footsteps. At last he gave a great sigh, and said, "I'm so tired." But he did not hear the gentle echo that answered from far away over his head, for at the same moment he came against the lowest of a few steps that stretched across the church, and fell down and hurt his arm. He cried a little first, and then crawled up the steps on his hands and knees. At the top he came to a little bit of carpet, on which he lay down, and there he lay staring at the dull window that rose nearly 100 feet above his head. Now this was the eastern window of the church, and the moon was at that moment just on the edge of the horizon. The next she was peeping over it, and lo, with the moon, St. John and St. Paul and the rest of them began to dawn in the window in their lovely garments. Diamond did not know that the wonder-working moon was behind, and he thought all the light was coming out of the window itself, and that the good old men were appearing to help him, growing out of the night and the darkness, because he had hurt his arm, and was very tired and lonely, and North Wind was so long in coming. So he lay and looked at them backwards over his head, wondering when they would come down, or what they would do next. They were very dim, for the moonlight was not strong enough for the colours, and he had enough to do with his eyes trying to make out their shapes. So his eyes grew tired, and more tired, and his eyelids grew so heavy that they would keep tumbling down over his eyes. He kept lifting them and lifting them, but every time they were heavier than the last. It was no use, they were too much for him. Sometimes, before he had got them half up, down they were again, and at length he gave it up quite, and the moment he gave it up, he was fast asleep. End of chapter 7. Recording by Maricel Kui. Chapter 8 of At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 8. The East Window. That Diamond had fallen fast asleep is very evident from the strange things he now fancied as taking place, for he thought he heard a sound as of whispering up in the great window. He tried to open his eyes, but he could not, and the whispering went on and grew louder and louder, until he could hear every word that was said. He thought it was the apostles talking about him, but he could not open his eyes. "And how comes he to be lying there, Saint Peter?" said one. "I think I saw him a while ago up in the gallery under the Nicodemus window. Perhaps he has fallen down." "What do you think, Saint Matthew?" "I don't think he could have crept here after falling from such a height. He must have been killed." "What are we to do with him? We can't leave him lying there, and we could not make him comfortable up here in the window. It's rather crowded already. What do you say, Saint Thomas?" "Let's go down and look at him." There came a rustling and a chinking for some time, and then there was a silence, and Diamond felt somehow that all the apostles were standing round him and looking down on him, and still he could not open his eyes. "What is the matter with him, St. Luke?" asked one. "There's nothing the matter with him," answered St. Luke, who must have joined the company of the apostles from the next window, one would think. "He's in a sound sleep." "I have it," cried another. "This is one of North Wind's tricks. She has caught him up and dropped him at our door, like a withered leaf or a foundling baby. I don't understand that woman's conduct, I must say. As if we hadn't enough to do with our money, without going taking care of other people's children. That's not what our forefathers built cathedrals for." Now Diamond could not bear to hear such things against North Wind, who, he knew, never played anybody a trick. She was far too busy with her own work for that. He struggled hard to open his eyes, but without success. "She should consider that a church is not a place for pranks, not to mention that we live in it," said another. "It is certainly disrespectful of her, but she always is disrespectful. What right has she to bang at our windows as she has been doing the whole of this night? I dare say there is glass broken somewhere. I know my blue robe is in a dreadful mess, with the rain first and the dust after. It will cost me shillings to clean it." Then Diamond knew that they could not be apostles, talking like this. They could only be the sextons and vergers and such like, who got up at night and put on the robes of deans and bishops, and called each other grand names, as the foolish servants he had heard his father tell of call themselves lords and ladies after their masters and mistresses. And he was so angry at their daring to abuse North Wind that he jumped up, crying, "North Wind knows best what she is about. She has a good right to blow the cobwebs from your windows, for she was sent to do it. She sweeps them away from grander places, I can tell you, for I've been with her at it." This was what he began to say, but as he spoke, his eyes came wide open, and behold, there were neither apostles nor vergers there, not even a window with the effigies of holy men in it, but a dark heap of hay all about him, and the little panes in the roof of his loft glimmering blue in the light of the morning. Old Diamond was coming awake down below in the stable. In a moment more he was on his feet, and shaking himself so that young Diamond's bed trembled under him. "He's grand at shaking himself," said Diamond. "I wish I could shake myself like that. But then I can wash myself, and he can't. What fun it would be to see old Diamond washing his face with his hoofs and iron shoes! Wouldn't it be a picture?" So saying, he got up and dressed himself. Then he went out into the garden. There must have been a tremendous wind in the night, for although all was quiet now, there lay the little summer house crushed to the ground, and over it the great elm tree, which the wind had broken across, being much decayed in the middle. Diamond almost cried to see the wilderness of green leaves, which used to be so far up in the blue air, tossing about in the breeze, and liking it best when the wind blew it most, now lying so near the ground, and without any hope of ever getting up into the deep air again. "I wonder how old the tree is," thought Diamond. "It must take a long time to get so near the sky as that poor tree was." "Yes, indeed," said the voice beside him, for Diamond had spoken the last words aloud. Diamond started, and looking around saw a clergyman, a brother of Mrs. Coleman, who happened to be visiting her. He was a great scholar, and was in the habit of rising early. "Who are you, my man?" he added. "Little Diamond," answered the boy. "Oh, I have heard of you. How do you come to be up so early?" "Because the sham apostles talked such nonsense, they waked me up." The clergyman stared. Diamond saw that he had better have held his tongue, for he could not explain things. "You must have been dreaming, my little man," said he. "Dear, dear," he went on, looking at the tree, "there has been terrible work here. This is the north wind's doing. What a pity! I wish we lived at the back of it, I'm sure." "Where is that, sir?" asked Diamond. "Away in the Hyperborean regions," answered the clergyman, smiling. "I never heard of the place," returned Diamond. "I dare say not," answered the clergyman. "But if this tree had been there now, it would not have been blown down, for there is no wind there." "But please, sir, if it had been there," said Diamond, "we should not have had to be sorry for it." "Certainly not." "Then we shouldn't have had to be glad for it either." "You're quite right, my boy," said the clergyman, looking at him very kindly, as he turned away to the house with his eyes bent towards the earth. But Diamond thought within himself, "I will ask North Wind next time I see her to take me to that country. I think she did speak about it once before." End of chapter 8. Recording by Maricel Kui. Chapter 9 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 9. How Diamond got to the back of the north wind. When Diamond went home to breakfast, he found his father and mother already seated at the table. They were both busy with their bread and butter, and Diamond sat himself down in his usual place. His mother looked up at him, and, after watching him for a moment, said, "I don't think the boy is looking well, husband." "Don't you? Well, I don't know. I think he looks pretty bobbish. How do you feel yourself, Diamond, my boy?" "Quite well, thank you, father. At least, I think I've got a little headache." "There, I told you," said his father and mother both at once. "The child's very poorly," added his mother. "The child's quite well," added his father. And then they both laughed. "You see," said his mother, "I've had a letter from my sister at Sandwich." "Sleepy old hole," said his father. "Don't abuse the place. There's good people in it," said his mother. "Right, old lady," returned his father. "Only I don't believe there are more than 2 pair of carriage horses in the whole blessed place." "Well, people can get to heaven without carriages, or coachmen either, husband. Not that I should like to go without my coachman, you know. But about the boy?" "What boy?" "That boy there, staring at you with his goggle eyes." "Have I got goggle eyes, mother?" asked Diamond, a little dismayed. "Not too goggle," said his mother, who was quite proud of her boy's eyes, only did not want to make him vain. "Not too goggle, only you need not stare so." "Well, what about him?" said his father. "I told you I had got a letter." "Yes, from your sister, not from Diamond." "La, husband, you've got out of bed the wrong leg first this morning, I do believe." "I always get out with both at once," said his father, laughing. "Well, listen then. His aunt wants the boy to go down and see her." "And that's why you want to make out that he ain't looking well." "No more he is. I think he had better go." "Well, I don't care, if you can find the money," said his father. "I'll manage that," said his mother. And so it was agreed that Diamond should go to Sandwich. I will not describe the preparations Diamond made. You would have thought he had been going on a 3 months' voyage. Nor will I describe the journey, for our business is now at the place. He was met at the station by his aunt, a cheerful middle-aged woman, and conveyed in safety to the sleepy old town, as his father called it. And no wonder that it was sleepy, for it was nearly dead of old age. Diamond went about staring with his beautiful goggle eyes at the quaint old streets and the shops and the houses. Everything looked very strange indeed, for here was a town abandoned by its nurse, the sea, like an old oyster left on the shore till it gaped for weariness. It used to be one of the 5 chief seaports in England, but it began to hold itself too high, and the consequence was the sea grew less and less intimate with it, gradually drew back and kept more to itself, till at length it left it high and dry. Sandwich was a seaport no more. The sea went on with its own tide business a long way off, and forgot it. Of course it went to sleep, and had no more to do with ships. That's what comes to cities and nations, and boys and girls who say, "I can do without your help. I'm enough for myself." Diamond soon made great friends with an old woman who kept a toy shop, for his mother had given him 2 pence for pocket money before he left, and he had gone into her shop to spend it, and she got talking to him. She looked very funny, because she had not got any teeth, but Diamond liked her, and went often to her shop, although he had nothing to spend there after the 2 pence was gone. One afternoon he had been wandering rather wearily about the streets for some time. It was a hot day, and he felt tired. As he passed the toy shop, he stepped in. "Please, may I sit down for a minute on this box?" he said, thinking the old woman was somewhere in the shop. But he got no answer, and sat down without one. Around him were a great many toys of all prices, from a penny up to shillings. All at once he heard a gentle whirring somewhere amongst them. It made him start and look behind him. There were the sails of a windmill going round and round, almost close to his ear. He thought at first it must be one of those toys which are wound up and go with clockwork, but no, it was a common penny toy, with the windmill at the end of a whistle, and when the whistle blows the windmill goes. But the wonder was that there was no one at the whistle end blowing, and yet the sails were turning round and round, now faster, now slower, now faster again. "What can it mean?" said Diamond aloud. "It means me," said the tiniest voice he had ever heard. "Who are you, please?" asked Diamond. "Well, really, I begin to be ashamed of you," said the voice. "I wonder how long it will be before you know me, or how often I might take you in before you got sharp enough to suspect me. You are as bad as a baby that doesn't know his mother in a new bonnet." "Not quite so bad as that, dear North Wind," said Diamond, "for I didn't see you at all, and indeed I don't see you yet, although I recognize your voice. Do grow a little, please." "Not a hair's breadth," said the voice, and it was the smallest voice that ever spoke. "What are you doing here?" "I am come to see my aunt. But please, North Wind, why didn't you come back for me in the church that night?" "I did. I carried you safe home. All the time you were dreaming about the glass apostles, you were lying in my arms." "I'm so glad," said Diamond. "I thought that must be it, only I wanted to hear you say so. Did you sink the ship then?" "Yes." "And drown everybody?" "Not quite. One boat got away with 6 or 7 men in it." "How could the boat swim when the ship couldn't?" "Of course I had some trouble with it. I had to contrive a bit, and manage the waves a little. When they're once thoroughly waked up, I have a good deal of trouble with them sometimes. They're apt to get stupid with tumbling over each other's heads. That's when they're fairly at it. However, the boat got to a desert island before noon the next day." "And what good will come of that?" "I don't know. I obeyed orders. Good bye." "Oh, stay, North Wind, do stay!" cried Diamond, dismayed to see the windmill get slower and slower. "What is it, my dear child?" said North Wind, and the windmill began turning again so swiftly that Diamond could scarcely see it. "What a big voice you've got! And what a noise you do make with it! What is it you want? I have little to do, but that little must be done." "I want you to take me to the country at the back of the north wind." "That's not so easy," said North Wind, and was silent for so long that Diamond thought she was gone indeed. But after he had quite given her up, the voice began again. "I almost wish Herodotus had held his tongue about it. Much he knew of it." "Why do you wish that, North Wind?" "Because then that clergyman would never have heard of it, and set you wanting to go. But we shall see, we shall see. You must go home now, my dear, for you don't seem very well, and I'll see what can be done for you. Don't wait for me. I've got to break a few of old Goody's toys. She's thinking too much of her new stock. 2 or 3 will do. There, go now." Diamond rose, quite sorry, and without a word left the shop, and went home. It soon appeared that his mother had been right about him, for that same afternoon his head began to ache very much, and he had to go to bed. He awoke in the middle of the night. The lattice window of his room had blown open, and the curtains of his little bed were swinging about in the wind. "If that should be North Wind now," thought Diamond. But the next moment he heard some one closing the window, and his aunt came to his bedside. She put her hand on his face and said, "How's your head, dear?" "Better, auntie, I think. Would you like something to drink?" "Oh yes, I should, please." So his aunt gave him some lemonade, for she had been used to nursing sick people, and Diamond felt very much refreshed, and laid his head down again to go very fast asleep, as he thought. And so he did, but only to come awake again, as a fresh burst of wind blew the lattice open a second time. The same moment he found himself in a cloud of North Wind's hair, with her beautiful face, set in it like a moon, bending over him. "Quick, Diamond," she said. "I have found such a chance." "But I'm not well," said Diamond. "I know that, but you will be better for a little fresh air. You shall have plenty of that." "You want me to go, then?" "Yes, I do. It won't hurt you." "Very well," said Diamond, and getting out of the bedclothes, he jumped into North Wind's arms. "We must make haste before your aunt comes," said she, as she glided out of the open lattice and left it swinging. The moment Diamond felt her arms fold around him, he began to feel better. It was a moonless night, and very dark, with glimpses of stars when the clouds parted. "I used to dash the waves about here," said North Wind, "where cows and sheep are feeding now, but we shall soon get to them. There they are." And Diamond, looking down, saw the white glimmer of breaking water far below him. "You see, Diamond," said North Wind, "it is very difficult for me to get you to the back of the North Wind, for that country lies in the very north itself, and of course I can't blow northwards." "Why not?" asked Diamond. "You little silly," said North Wind. "Don't you see that if I were to blow northwards, I should be South Wind? And that is as much as to say that one person could be two persons." "But how can you ever get home at all, then?" "You are quite right. That is my home, though I never get farther than the outer door. I sit on the doorstep, and hear the voices inside. I am nobody there, Diamond." "I'm very sorry." "Why?" "That you should be nobody." "Oh, I don't mind it. Dear little man, you will be very glad some day to be nobody yourself. But you can't understand that now, and you had better not try. For if you do, you will be certain to go fancying some egregious nonsense, and making yourself miserable about it." "Then I won't," said Diamond. "There's a good boy. It will all come in good time." "But you haven't told me how you get to the doorstep, you know." "It is easy enough for me. I have only to consent to be nobody, and there I am. I draw into myself, and there I am on the doorstep. But you can easily see, or you have less sense than I think, that to drag you, you heavy thing, along with me would take centuries, and I could not give the time to it." "Oh, I'm so sorry," said Diamond. "What for now, pet?" "That I'm so heavy for you. I would be lighter if I could, but I don't know how." "You silly darling! Why, I could toss you 100 miles from me if I liked. It is only when I am going home that I shall find you heavy." "Then you are going home with me?" "Of course. Did I not come to fetch you just for that?" "But all this time you must be going southwards." "Yes, of course I am." "How can you be taking me northwards then?" "A very sensible question. But you shall see. I will get rid of a few of these clouds. Only they do come up so fast. It's like trying to blow a brook dry. There, what do you see now?" "I think I see a little boat away there down below." "A little boat indeed! Well, she is a yacht of 200 tons, and the captain of it is a friend of mine, for he is a man of good sense, and can sail his craft well. I've helped him many a time when he little thought it. I've heard him grumbling at me when I was doing the very best I could for him. Why, I've carried him 80 miles a day, again and again, right north." "He must have dodged for that," said Diamond, who had been watching the vessels, and had seen that they went other ways than the wind blew. "Of course he must. But don't you see, it was the best I could do. I couldn't be South Wind, and besides, it gave him a share in the business. It is not good at all, mind that, Diamond, to do everything for those you love, and not give them a share in the doing. It is not kind. It's making too much of yourself, my child. If I had been South Wind, he would only have smoked his pipe all day, and made himself stupid. But how could he be a man of sense and grumble at you when you were doing your best for him? Oh, you must make allowances, said North Wind, or you will never do justice to anybody. You do understand, then, that a captain may sail north in spite of a north wind. Yes, supplemented Diamond. Now I do think you must be stupid, my dear, said North Wind. Suppose the north wind did not blow, where would he be then? Why, then the south wind would carry him. So you think that when the north wind stops, the south wind blows? Nonsense! If I didn't blow, the captain couldn't sail his 80 miles a day. No doubt South Wind would carry him faster, but South Wind is sitting on her doorstep then. And if I stopped, there would be a dead calm. So you are all wrong to say he can sail north in spite of me. He sails north by my help, and my help alone. You see that, Diamond? Yes, I do, North Wind. I am stupid, but I don't want to be stupid. Good boy. I am going to blow you north in that little craft, one of the finest that ever sailed the sea. Here we are, right over it. I shall be blowing against you. You will be sailing against me, and all will be just as we want it. The captain won't get on so fast as he would like, but he will get on, and so shall we. I'm just going to put you on board. Do you see in front of the tiller that thing the man is working, now to one side, now to the other, a round thing like the top of a drum? Yes, said Diamond. Below that is where they keep their spare sails, and some stores of that sort. I am going to blow that cover off. The same moment I will drop you on deck, and you must tumble in. Don't be afraid, it is of no depth, and you will fall on sailcloth. You will find it nice and warm and dry, only dark, and you will know I am near you by every roll and pitch of the vessel. Coil yourself up and go to sleep. The yacht shall be my cradle, and you shall be my baby. Thank you, dear North Wind. I am not a bit afraid, said Diamond. In a moment they were on a level with the bulwarks, and the north wind sent the hatch of the after store rattling away over the deck to leeward. The next, Diamond found himself in the dark, for he had tumbled through the hole as North Wind had told him, and the cover was replaced over his head. Away he went, rolling to leeward, for the wind began all at once to blow hard. He heard the call of the captain, and the loud trampling of the men over his head, as they hauled at the main sheet to get the boom on board, that they might take in a reef in the mainsail. Diamond felt about until he had found what seemed the most comfortable place, and there he snuggled down and lay. Hours after hours, a great many of them, went by, and still Diamond lay there. He never felt in the least tired or impatient, for a strange pleasure filled his heart. The straining of the masts, the creaking of the boom, the singing of the ropes, the banging of the blocks as they put the vessel about, all fell in with the roaring of the wind above, the surge of the waves past her sides, and the thud with which every now and then one would strike her, while through it all Diamond could hear the gurgling, rippling, talking flow of the water against her planks, as she slipped through it, lying now on this side, now on that, like a subdued air, running through the grand music his north wind was making about him, to keep him from tiring as they sped on towards the country at the back of her doorstep. How long this lasted, Diamond had no idea. He seemed to fall asleep sometimes, only through the sleep he heard the sounds going on. At length the weather seemed to get worse. The confusion and trampling of feet grew more frequent over his head. The vessel lay over more and more on her side, and went roaring through the waves, which banged and thumped at her as if in anger. All at once arose a terrible uproar. The hatch was blown off. A cold fierce wind swept in upon him, and a long arm came with it, which laid hold of him and lifted him out. The same moment he saw the little vessel far below him righting herself. She had taken in all her sails, and lay now tossing on the waves like a sea bird with folded wings. A short distance to the south lay a much larger vessel, with 2 or 3 sails set, and towards it North Wind was carrying Diamond. It was a German ship on its way to the North Pole. "That vessel down there will give us a lift now," said North Wind, "and after that I must do the best I can." She managed to hide him amongst the flags of the big ship, which were all snugly stowed away, and on they sped towards the north. At length one night she whispered in his ear, "Come on deck, Diamond," and he got up at once and crept on deck. Everything looked very strange. Here and there on all sides were huge masses of floating ice, looking like cathedrals and castles and crags, while away beyond was a blue sea. "Is the sun rising or setting?" asked Diamond. "Neither or both, which you please. I can hardly tell which myself. If he is setting now, he will be rising the next moment." "What a strange light it is!" said Diamond. "I have heard that the sun doesn't go to bed all the summer in these parts. Miss Coleman told me that. I suppose he feels very sleepy, and that is why the light he sends out looks so like a dream." "That will account for it well enough for all practical purposes," said North Wind. Some of the icebergs were drifting northwards. One was passing very near the ship. North Wind seized Diamond, and with a single bound lighted on one of them, a huge thing with sharp pinnacles and great clefts. At the same instant a wind began to blow from the south. North Wind hurried Diamond down the north side of the iceberg, stepping by its jags and splintering, for this berg had never got far enough south to be melted and smoothed by the summer sun. She brought him to a cave near the water, where she entered, and, letting Diamond go, sat down as if weary on a ledge of ice. Diamond seated himself on the other side, and for a while was enraptured with the colour of the air inside the cave. It was a deep, dazzling, lovely blue, deeper than the deepest blue of the sky. The blue seemed to be in constant motion, like the blackness when you press your eyeballs with your fingers, boiling and sparkling. But when he looked across to North Wind, he was frightened. Her face was worn and livid. "What is the matter with you, dear North Wind?" he said. "Nothing much. I feel very faint, but you mustn't mind it, for I can bear it quite well. South wind always blows me faint. If it were not for the cool of the thick ice between me and her, I should faint altogether. Indeed, as it is, I fear I must vanish." Diamond stared at her in terror, for he saw that her form and face were growing, not small, but transparent, like something dissolving, not in water, but in light. He could see the side of the blue cave through her very heart, and she melted away till all that was left was a pale face, like the moon in the morning, with 2 great lucid eyes in it. "I am going, Diamond," she said. "Does it hurt you?" asked Diamond. "It's very uncomfortable," she answered, "but I don't mind it, for I shall come all right again before long. I thought I should be able to go with you all the way, but I cannot. You must not be frightened, though. Just go straight on, and you will come all right. You'll find me on the doorstep." As she spoke, her face too faded quite away. Only Diamond thought he could still see her eyes shining through the blue. When he went closer, however, he found that what he thought were eyes were only 2 hollows in the ice. North Wind was quite gone, and Diamond would have cried if he had not trusted her so thoroughly. So he sat still in the blue air of the cavern, listening to the wash and ripple of the water all about the base of the iceberg as it sped on and on into the open sea northwards. It was an excellent craft to go with the current, for there was twice as much of it below water as above, but a light south wind was blowing too, and so it went fast. After a while Diamond went out and sat on the edge of his floating island, and looked down into the ocean beneath him. The white sides of the berg reflected so much light below the water that he could see far down into the green abyss. Sometimes he fancied he saw the eyes of North Wind looking up at him from below, but the fancy never lasted beyond the moment of its birth, and the time passed he did not know how, for he felt as if he were in a dream. When he got tired of the green water, he went into the blue cave, And when he got tired of the blue cave, he went out and gazed all about him on the blue sea, ever sparkling in the sun, which kept wheeling about the sky, never going below the horizon. But he chiefly gazed northwards to see whether any land were appearing. All this time he never wanted to eat. He broke off little bits of the berg now and then and sucked them, and he thought them very nice. At length, one time he came out of his cave, he spied far off on the horizon a shining peak that rose into the sky like the top of some tremendous iceberg, and his vessel was bearing him straight towards it. As it went on, the peak rose and rose higher and higher above the horizon, and other peaks rose after it, with sharp edges and jagged ridges connecting them. Diamond thought this must be the place he was going to, and he was right, for the mountains rose and rose, till he saw the line of the coast at their feet, and at length the iceberg drove into a little bay, all around which were lofty precipices with snow on their tops, and streaks of ice down their sides. The berg floated slowly up to a projecting rock. Diamond stepped on shore, and without looking behind him began to follow a natural path which led windingly towards the top of the precipice. When he reached it, he found himself on a broad table of ice, along which he could walk without much difficulty. Before him, at a considerable distance, rose a lofty ridge of ice, which shot up into fantastic pinnacles and towers and battlements. The air was very cold, and seemed somehow dead, for there was not the slightest breath of wind. In the centre of the ridge before him appeared a gap like the opening of a valley, but as he walked towards it, gazing, and wondering whether that could be the way he had to take, he saw that what had appeared a gap was the form of a woman seated against the ice front of the ridge, leaning forwards with her hands in her lap, and her hair hanging down to the ground. "It is North Wind on her doorstep," said Diamond joyfully, and hurried on. He soon came up to the place, and there the form sat, like one of the great figures at the door of an Egyptian temple, motionless, with drooping arms and head. Then Diamond grew frightened, because she did not move nor speak. He was sure it was North Wind, but he thought she must be dead at last. Her face was white as the snow, her eyes were blue as the air in the ice cave, and her hair hung down straight like icicles. She had on a greenish robe, like the colour in the hollows of a glacier seen from far off. He stood up before her, and gazed fearfully into her face for a few minutes before he ventured to speak. At length, with great effort and a trembling voice, he faltered out, "North Wind." "Well, child?" said the form, without lifting its head. "Are you ill, dear North Wind?" "No, I am waiting." "What for?" "Till I am wanted." "You don't care for me any more?" said Diamond, almost crying now. "Yes, I do. Only I can't show it. All my love is down at the bottom of my heart, but I feel it bubbling there." "What do you want me to do next, dear North Wind?" said Diamond, wishing to show his love by being obedient. "What do you want to do yourself?" "I want to go into the country at your back." "Then you must go through me." "I don't know what you mean." "I mean just what I say. You must walk on as if I were an open door, and go right through me." "But that will hurt you." "Not in the least. It will hurt you, though." "I don't mind that, if you tell me to do it." "Do it," said North Wind. Diamond walked towards her instantly. When he reached her knees, he put out his hand to lay it on her, but nothing was there save an intense cold. He walked on. Then all grew white about him, and the cold stung him like fire. He walked on still, groping through the whiteness. It thickened about him. At last it got into his heart, and he lost all sense. I would say that he fainted. Only whereas in common faints all grows black about you, he felt swallowed up in whiteness. It was when he reached North Wind's heart that he fainted and fell. But as he fell, he rolled over the threshold, and it was thus that Diamond got to the back of the north wind. End of chapter 9. Recording by Maricel Kui. Chapter 10 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 10. At the Back of the North Wind. I have now come to the most difficult part of my story. And why? Because I do not know enough about it. And why should I not know as much about this part as about any other part? For of course I could know nothing about the story except Diamond had told it. And why should not Diamond tell about the country at the back of the north wind, as well as about his adventures in getting there? Because when he came back he had forgotten a great deal, and what he did remember was very hard to tell. Things there are so different from things here. The people there do not speak the same language, for one thing. Indeed, Diamond insisted that there they do not speak at all. I do not think he was right, but it may well have appeared so to Diamond. The fact is, we have different reports of the place from the most trustworthy people. Therefore we are bound to believe that it appears somewhat different to different people. All, however, agree in a general way about it. I will tell you something of what two very different people have reported, both of whom knew more about it, I believe, than Herodotus. One of them speaks from his own experience, for he visited the country. The other from the testimony of a young peasant girl, who came back from it for a month's visit to her friends. The former was a great Italian of noble family, who died more than 500 years ago. The latter a Scotch shepherd, who died not 40 years ago. The Italian then informs us that he had to enter that country through a fire so hot that he would have thrown himself into boiling glass to cool himself. This was not Diamond's experience, but then Durante, that was the name of the Italian, and it means lasting, for his books will last as long as there are enough men in the world worthy of having them. Durante was an elderly man, and Diamond was a little boy, and so their experience must be a little different. The peasant girl, on the other hand, fell fast asleep in a wood, and woke in the same country. In describing it, Durante says that the ground everywhere smelt sweetly, and that a gentle, even-tempered wind, which never blew faster or slower, breathed in his face as he went, making all the leaves point one way, not so as to disturb the birds in the top of the trees, but on the contrary, sounding a bass to their song. He describes also a little river, which was so full that its little waves, as it hurried along, bent the grass, full of red and yellow flowers, through which it flowed. He says that the purest stream in the world beside this one would look as if it were mixed with something that did not belong to it, even though it was flowing ever in the brown shadow of the trees, and neither sun nor moon could shine upon it. He seems to imply that it is always the month of May in that country. It would be out of place to describe here the wonderful sights he saw, for the music of them is in another key from that of this story, and I shall therefore only add from the account of this traveller that the people there are so free and so just and so healthy that every one of them has a crown like a king and a mitre like a priest. The peasant girl, Kilmeny was her name, could not report such grand things as Durante, for as the shepherd says, telling her story as I tell Diamond's, Kilmeny had been she knew not where, and Kilmeny had seen what she could not declare. Kilmeny had been where the cock never crew, where the rain never fell and the wind never blew. But it seemed as the harp of the sky had rung, and the airs of heaven played round her tongue, when she spoke of the lovely forms she had seen, and a land where sin had never been, a land of love and a land of light, withouten sun or moon or night, where the river swayed a living stream, and the light a pure and cloudless beam, the land of vision, it would seem, and still an everlasting dream." The last two lines are the shepherd's own remark, and a matter of opinion, but it is clear, I think, that Kilmeny must have described the same country as Durante saw, though, not having his experience, she could neither understand nor describe it so well. Now I must give you such fragments of recollection as Diamond was able to bring back with him. When he came to himself after he fell, he found himself at the back of the North Wind. North Wind herself was nowhere to be seen. Neither was there a vestige of snow or of ice within sight. The sun, too, had vanished, but that was no matter, for there was plenty of a certain still rayless light. Where it came from he never found out, but he thought it belonged to the country itself. Sometimes he thought it came out of the flowers, which were very bright, but had no strong colour. He said the river, for all agreed that there is a river there, flowed not only through but over grass. Its channel, instead of being rock, stones, pebbles, sand, or anything else, was of pure meadow grass, not over long. He insisted that if it did not sing tunes in people's ears, it sung tunes in their heads, in proof of which I may mention that, in the troubles which followed, Diamond was often heard singing, and when asked what he was singing, would answer, "One of the tunes the river at the back of the North Wind sang." And I may as well say at once that Diamond never told these things to any one but no, I had better not say who it was, but whoever it was told me, and I thought it would be well to write them for my child readers. He could not say he was very happy there, for he had neither his father nor mother with him. But he felt so still and quiet and patient and contented, that as far as the mere feeling went, it was something better than mere happiness. Nothing went wrong at the back of the North Wind, neither was anything quite right, he thought, only everything was going to be right some day. His account disagreed with that of Durante, and agreed with that of Kilmeny in this, that he protested there was no wind there at all. I fancy he missed it. At all events, we could not do without wind. It all depends on how big our lungs are, whether the wind is too strong for us or not. When the person he told about it asked him whether he saw anybody he knew there, he answered, "Only a little girl belonging to the gardener, who thought he had lost her, but was quite mistaken, for there she was safe enough, and was to come back some day as I came back, if they would only wait." "Did you talk to her, Diamond?" "No, nobody talks there. They only look at each other and understand everything." "Is it cold there?" "No." "Is it hot?" "No." "What is it then?" "You never think about such things there." "What a queer place it must be." "It's a very good place." "Do you want to go back again?" "No, I don't think I have left it. I feel it here somewhere." "Did the people there look pleased?" "Yes, quite pleased, only a little sad." "Then they didn't look glad?" "They looked as if they were waiting to be gladder some day." This was how Diamond used to answer questions about that country, and now I will take up the story again, and tell you how he got back to this country. End of chapter 10. Recording by Maricel Kui. Chapter 11 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 11. How Diamond Got Home Again. When one at the back of the North Wind wanted to know how things were going with any one he loved, he had to go to a certain tree, climb the stem, and sit down in the branches. In a few minutes, if he kept very still, he would see something, at least of what was going on with the people he loved. One day, when Diamond was sitting in this tree, he began to long very much to get home again. And no wonder, for he saw his mother crying. Durante says that the people there may always follow their wishes, because they never wish but what is good. Diamond's wish was to get home, and he would fain follow his wish. But how was he to set about it? If he could only see North Wind! But the moment he had got to her back, she was gone altogether from his sight. He had never seen her back. She might be sitting on her doorstep still, looking southwards, and waiting, white and thin and blue-eyed, until she was wanted. Or she might have again become a mighty creature, with power to do that which was demanded of her, and gone far away upon many missions. She must be somewhere, however. He could not go home without her, and therefore he must find her. She could never have intended to leave him always away from his mother. If there had been any danger of that, she would have told him, and given him his choice about going, for North Wind was right honest. How to find North Wind, therefore, occupied all his thoughts. In his anxiety about his mother, he used to climb the tree every day, and sit in its branches. However many of the dwellers did so, they never incommoded one another, for the moment one got into the tree, he became invisible to every one else, and it was such a wide-spreading tree that there was room for every one of the people of the country in it, without the least interference with each other. Sometimes on getting down, two of them would meet at the root, and then they would smile to each other more sweetly than at any other time, as much as to say, "Ah, you've been up there too." One day he was sitting on one of the outer branches of the tree, looking southwards after his home. Far away was a blue shining sea, dotted with gleaming and sparkling specks of white. Those were the icebergs. Nearer he saw a great range of snow-capped mountains, and down below him the lovely meadow grass of the country, with the stream flowing and flowing through it, away towards the sea. As he looked, he began to wonder, for the whole country lay beneath him like a map, and that which was near him looked just as small as that which he knew to be miles away. The ridge of ice which encircled it appeared but a few yards off, and no larger than the row of pebbles with which a child will mark out the boundaries of the kingdom he has appropriated on the seashore. He thought he could distinguish the vapoury form of North Wind, seated as he had left her, on the other side. Hastily he descended the tree, and to his amazement found that the map or model of the country still lay at his feet. He stood in it. With one stride he had crossed the river. With another he had reached the ridge of ice. With the third he stepped over its peaks, and sank wearily down at North Wind's knees, for there she sat on her doorstep. The peaks of the great ridge of ice were as lofty as ever behind her, and the country at her back had vanished from Diamond's view. North Wind was as still as Diamond had left her. Her pale face was white as the snow, and her motionless eyes were as blue as the caverns in the ice. But the instant Diamond touched her, her face began to change like that of one waking from sleep. Light began to glimmer from the blue of her eyes. A moment more, and she laid her hand on Diamond's head, and began playing with his hair. Diamond took hold of her hand, and laid his face to it. She gave a little start. "How very alive you are, child," she murmured. "Come nearer to me." By the help of the stones all around, he clambered up beside her, and laid himself against her bosom. She gave a great sigh, slowly lifted her arms, and slowly folded them about him until she clasped him close. Yet a moment, and she roused herself, and came quite awake, and the cold of her bosom, which had pierced Diamond's bones, vanished. "Have you been sitting here ever since I went through you, dear North Wind?" asked Diamond, stroking her hand. "Yes," she answered, looking at him with her old kindness. "Ain't you very tired?" "No, I've often had to sit longer. Do you know how long you have been?" "Oh, years and years," answered Diamond. "You have just been 7 days," returned North Wind. "I thought I had been 100 years!" exclaimed Diamond. "Yes, I daresay," replied North Wind. "You've been away from here 7 days, but how long you may have been in there is quite another thing. Behind my back and before my face things are so different, they don't go at all by the same rule." "I'm very glad," said Diamond, after thinking a while. "Why?" asked North Wind. "Because I've been such a long time there, and such a little while away from mother. Why, she won't be expecting me home from Sandwich yet." "No, but we mustn't talk any longer. I've got my orders now, and we must be off in a few minutes." Next moment Diamond found himself sitting alone on the rock. North Wind had vanished. A creature like a great humble-bee or a cockchafer flew past his face, but it could be neither, for there were no insects among the ice. It passed him again and again, flying in circles around him, and he concluded that it must be North Wind herself, no bigger than Tom Thumb when his mother put him in the nutshell lined with flannel. But she was no longer vapoury and thin. She was solid, although tiny. A moment more and she perched on his shoulder. "Come along, Diamond," she said in his ear, in the smallest and highest of treble voices. "It is time we were setting out for Sandwich." Diamond could just see her by turning his head towards his shoulder as far as he could, but only with one eye, for his nose came between her and the other. "Won't you take me in your arms and carry me?" he said in a whisper, for he knew she did not like a loud voice when she was small. "Ah, you ungrateful boy!" returned North Wind, smiling. "How dare you make game of me? Yes, I will carry you, but you shall walk a bit for your impertinence first. Come along." She jumped from his shoulder, but when Diamond looked for her upon the ground, he could see nothing but a little spider with long legs that made its way over the ice towards the south. It ran very fast indeed for a spider, but Diamond ran a long way before it, and then waited for it. It was up with him sooner than he had expected, however, and it had grown a good deal. And the spider grew and went faster and faster, till all at once Diamond discovered that it was not a spider, but a weasel. And away glided the weasel, and away went Diamond after it, and it took all the run there was in him to keep up with the weasel. And the weasel grew and grew, till all at once Diamond saw that the weasel was not a weasel, but a cat. And away went the cat, and Diamond after it. And when he had run half a mile, he found the cat waiting for him, sitting up and washing her face not to lose time. And away went the cat again, and Diamond after it. But the next time he came up with the cat was not a cat, but a hunting leopard. And the hunting leopard grew to a jaguar, all covered with spots like eyes. And the jaguar grew to a Bengal tiger. And at none of them was Diamond afraid, for he had been at North Wind's back, and he could be afraid of her no longer, whatever she did or grew. And the tiger flew over the snow in a straight line for the south, growing less and less to Diamond's eyes, till it was only a black speck upon the whiteness, and then it vanished altogether. And now Diamond felt that he would rather not run any farther, and that the ice had got very rough. Besides, he was near the precipices that bounded the sea, so he slackened his pace to a walk, saying aloud to himself, "When North Wind has punished me enough for making game of her, she will come back to me. I know she will, for I can't go much farther without her." "You dear boy, it was only in fun. Here I am," said North Wind's voice behind him. Diamond turned, and saw her as he liked best to see her, standing beside him, a tall lady. "Where's the tiger?" he asked, for he knew all the creatures from a picture book that Miss Coleman had given him. "But of course," he added, "you were the tiger. I was puzzled and forgot. I saw it such a long way off before me, and there you were behind me. It's so odd, you know." "It must look very odd to you, Diamond. I see that. But it is no more odd to me than to break an old pine in two." "Well, that's odd enough," remarked Diamond.
So it is. I forgot. Well, none of these things are odder to me than it is to you to eat bread and butter." "Well, that's odd too, when I think of it," persisted Diamond. "I should just like a slice of bread and butter. I'm afraid to say how long it is how long it seems to me, that is, since I had anything to eat." "Come then," said North Wind, stooping and holding out her arms. "You shall have some bread and butter very soon. I am glad to find you want some." Diamond held up his arms to meet hers, and was safe upon her bosom. North Wind bounded into the air. Her tresses began to lift, and rise, and spread, and stream, and flow, and flutter. And with a roar from her hair, and an answering roar from one of the great glaciers beside them, whose slow torrent tumbled 2 or 3 icebergs at once into the waves at their feet, North Wind and Diamond went flying southwards. End of chapter 11. Recording by Maricel Kui.
Chapter 12 of At the Back of the North Wind. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Chapter 12. Who Met Diamond at Sandwich. As they flew, so fast they went that the sea slid away from under them like a great web of shot silk, blue shot with grey, and green shot with purple. They went so fast that the stars themselves appeared to sail away past them overhead like golden boats on a blue sea turned upside down. And they went so fast that Diamond himself went the other way as fast. I mean, he went fast asleep in North Wind's arms. When he woke, a face was bending over him, but it was not North Wind's. It was his mother's. He put out his arms to her, and she clasped him to her bosom, and burst out crying. Diamond kissed her again and again, to make her stop. Perhaps kissing is the best thing for crying, but it will not always stop it. "What is the matter, mother?" he said. "Oh, Diamond, my darling, you have been so ill," she sobbed. "No, mother dear, I've only been at the back of the North Wind," returned Diamond. "I thought you were dead," said his mother. But that moment the doctor came in. "Oh, there!" said the doctor, with gentle cheerfulness. "We're better to day, I see." Then he drew the mother aside, and told her not to talk to Diamond, or to mind what he might say, for he must be kept as quiet as possible. And indeed Diamond was not much inclined to talk, for he felt very strange and weak, which was little wonder, seeing that all the time he had been away he had only sucked a few lumps of ice, and there could not be much nourishment in them. Now, while he is lying there, getting strong again with chicken broth and other nice things, I will tell my readers what had been taking place at his home, for they ought to be told it. They may have forgotten that Miss Coleman was in a very poor state of health. Now there were 3 reasons for this. In the first place, her lungs were not strong. In the second place, there was a gentleman somewhere who had not behaved very well to her. In the third place, she had not anything particular to do. These 3 knots together are enough to make a lady very ill indeed. Of course she could not help the first cause, but if the other 2 cases had not existed, that would have been of little consequence. She would only have to be a little careful. The second she could not help quite, but if she had had anything to do, and had done it well, it would have been very difficult for any man to behave badly to her. And for this third cause of her illness, if she had had anything to do that was worth doing, she might have borne his bad behaviour so that even that would not have made her ill. It is not always easy, I confess, to find something to do that is worth doing, but the most difficult things are constantly being done, and she might have found something if she had tried. Her fault lay in this, that she had not tried. But, to be sure, her father and mother were to blame that they had never set her going. Only then again, nobody had told her father and mother that they ought to set her going in that direction. So as none of them would find it out of themselves, North Wind had to teach them. We know that North Wind was very busy that night on which she left Diamond in the cathedral. She had in a sense been blowing through and through the Coleman's house the whole of the night. First, Miss Coleman's maid had left a chink of her mistress' window open, thinking she had shut it, and North Wind had wound a few of her hairs round the lady's throat. She was considerably worse the next morning. Again, the ship which North Wind had sunk that very night belonged to Mr. Coleman, nor will my readers understand what a heavy loss this was to him until I have informed them that he had been getting poorer and poorer for some time. He was not so successful in his speculations as he had been, for he speculated a great deal more than was right, and it was time he should be pulled up. It is a hard thing for a rich man to grow poor, but it is an awful thing for him to grow dishonest, and some kinds of speculation lead a man deep into dishonesty before he thinks what he is about. Poverty will not make a man worthless. He may be worth a great deal more when he is poor than he was when he was rich, but dishonesty goes very far indeed to make a man of no value, a thing to be thrown out in the dust hole of the creation, like a bit of a broken basin, or a dirty rag. So North Wind had to look after Mr. Coleman, and try to make an honest man of him. So she sank the ship which was his last venture, and he was what himself and his wife and the world called ruined. Nor was this all yet, for on board that vessel Miss Coleman's lover was a passenger, and when the news came that the vessel had gone down, and that all on board had perished, we may be sure she did not think the loss of their fine house and garden and furniture the greatest misfortune in the world. Of course, the trouble did not end with Mr. Coleman and his family. Nobody can suffer alone. When the cause of suffering is most deeply hidden in the heart, and nobody knows anything about it but the man himself, he must be a great and good man indeed, such as few of us have known. If the pain inside him does not make him behave so as to cause all about him to be more or less uncomfortable. But when a man brings money troubles on himself by making haste to be rich, then most of the people he has to do with must suffer in the same way with himself. The elm tree which North Wind blew down that very night, as if small and great trials were to be gathered in one heap, crushed Miss Coleman's pretty summer house. Just so the fall of Mr. Coleman crushed the little family that lived over his coach house and stable. Before Diamond was well enough to be taken home, there was no home for him to go to. Mr. Coleman, or his creditors, for I do not know the particulars, had sold house, carriage, horses, furniture, and everything. He and his wife and daughter and Mrs. Crump had gone to live in a small house in Hoxton, where he would be unknown, and whence he could walk to his place of business in the city. For he was not an old man, and hoped yet to retrieve his fortunes. Let us hope that he lived to retrieve his honesty, the tail of which had slipped through his fingers to the very last joint, if not beyond it. Of course, Diamond's father had nothing to do for a time, but it was not so hard for him to have nothing to do as it was for Miss Coleman. He wrote to his wife that, if her sister would keep her there till he got a place, it would be better for them, and he would be greatly obliged to her. Meantime, the gentleman who had bought the house had allowed his furniture to remain where it was for a little while. Diamond's aunt was quite willing to keep them as long as she could. And indeed, Diamond was not yet well enough to be moved with safety. When he had recovered so far as to be able to go out, one day his mother got her sister's husband, who had a little pony cart, to carry them down to the seashore, and leave them there for a few hours. He had some business to do further on at Ramsgate, and would pick them up as he returned. A whiff of the sea air would do them both good, she said, and she thought besides she could best tell Diamond what had happened if she had him quite to herself. End of chapter 12. Recording by Marisol Kui.